with some more revolutionary dialogue, discussion, and action. But before going forward, I just want to give recognition to Dr. Kelly Harris, who's one of the professors here who helped to set this room up. If he's around, we'd like to have him stand up so we can recognize him. Okay, well, we will definitely make sure he gets his due recognition. But I just want to start out and opening it up and giving him a shout out for helping to set this up here at this university. We are now going to hear from Brother Glen Ford, and he is going to be doing a presentation on the ballot and the bullet, elections, war, and peace in the era of Donald Trump. And Glen Ford is, of course, the Executive Director of the Black Agenda Report. Uhuru!
Does this one work? Power to the people. And good afternoon. I know that Chairman Yeshitela was expecting me to do a broad overview of the history of Black people's exercise or attempts to exercise political power in the United States. But I'm going to start with the more recent history and look at the history around the period in which Malcolm X made that historic speech that we keep on playing at this conference, in which he introduced or elaborated on the theme of the ballot or the bullet. We've been playing that speech all morning. It's full of references to Dixiecrats and to President Lyndon Johnson and other facts that were very, very important during the period of that speech, but that not everybody is expected to recognize. But what that means is that he was speaking about the events of the day and the different actors, and there were developments that were coming fast and furious. And if you aren't familiar with those developments and how the people that Malcolm was interacting with and against, how they were relating to those developments, you can get a misinterpretation of what Malcolm really meant when he's talking about the ballot or the bullet. So I want to talk about the events that shaped that political environment around that speech, because it's relevant, of course, to our business this weekend, which comes under the theme of the ballot and the bullet. So if you don't quite get what Malcolm was speaking of then you will also misinterpret what we're trying to say now when we change the or the bullet to and the bullet. Malcolm X's antagonists, and maybe we should say the people that Malcolm X was trying to antagonize, were those politicians and those Black organizations that were trying to solidify their leadership position in the Black community by aligning themselves with the Democratic Party. This was the beginning of our modern Black leadership class, which is now fully entrenched in the Democratic Party and fully entrenched in leadership. In fact, the political game in Black America is all played almost entirely in the Democratic Party. But that was not set in stone back in 1964. In 1964, what Black politics was to become was up for grabs. And Malcolm X was a key player trying to direct Black political activity away from white-controlled institutions, very specifically the Democratic Party, and into a Black self-determinationist kind of conversation, because he was a Black nationalist and trying to define for a 1960s audience what he thought Black nationalists should be talking about. In the several years before he gave that speech, some momentous things had occurred. So I'm going to start not in Reconstruction or the 1930s, but in 1957, And in 1957, in Little Rock, Arkansas, a segregationist president, and I'm talking about President Eisenhower, who was a stone cold segregationist who opposed the integration of the armed forces, was forced by events to call in federal troops in Little Rock. This was at the height of the Cold War, and these mobs of white racists who were not just threatening, but wanted to kill Black children around the Little Rock school crisis, including hordes of white women, had just been acting the fool and showing their true racist, want to lynch somebody selves in front of the new institution called television. This was the first televised showing the whole world opportunity for the world to see the white people in the United States as they really were, spitting and cursing and going out of their minds in a frenzy to kill little Black children in Arkansas. And because the United States was trying to curry favor in the newly decolonizing world, and especially in Africa at that time, even a segregationist president like Eisenhower could not appear that he tolerated this kind of racist behavior. And so the events forced him to send federal troops into Little Rock to protect Black children. And this was the first time since the death of Reconstruction, since federal troops were pulled out of the South after 1877, that the federal government had intervened in force on the side of Black people. So Dwight Eisenhower became very, very popular in Black America. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I remember everybody saying, "Oh, look at that Dwight! That Dwight, he's doing the right thing." This is a segregationist president, but he was forced by these events to behave in a way that even though majorities of Blacks, especially in the North, had become more sympathetic to the Democratic Party than to the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. This was a real phenomenon, and Dwight Eisenhower's popularity soared in Black America, and it was feared among Democrats that his vice president, Richard Nixon, who everybody knew was going to run in 1960, might inherit some of that goodwill among Black Americans. So in the 1960 presidential race, for the first time ever, Republicans and Democrats actively solicited Black support. There was actual competition at the national level between these two parties to sway Black voters. The Democrats had not, on a national level, tried in a public kind of way to seem as if they were sympathetic to Black aspirations either, because much of the Democratic Party was, of course, the Dixiecrats in the South. And the Dixiecrats in 1948 had separated from the Democratic Party and ran on their own ticket. And they were always threatening to break away if the Democrats got too close to Black folks and took too aggressive a stance on civil rights. So the Democratic Party was very silent on civil rights all through the 50s. But now this situation changed in 1960. And this was the great opening where Black folks could actually act as if they had a choice in politics and as if anybody in the Democratic and Republican parties cared. And that shaped the whole debate, the whole political debate between Republicans and Democrats in those early years of the 60s. So you have to understand that environment to know why Malcolm was saying what he was saying. because this opening occurred, all of the aspiring Black political leaders in this very fluid situation, and those leaders included the usual gathering of hustlers and opportunists, as well as folks like Dr. King and others who were genuine social transformers. They were jockeying for a position with the Democrats, and all they talked about was the vote, and the vote being central. They saw the vote, and therefore their elevation into a now receptive Democratic Party as their own. I'm talking about these proto-Blackness leadership class folks, as their entrance into the corridors of power in the United States. And so these are Malcolm's antagonists, or the people that Malcolm wants to antagonize. But he had made his separation not long before from the Nation of Islam, and he was trying to figure out how one creates a Black nationalist movement using all the tools that are available that were not available to him when he was under the discipline of the Nation of Islam. And he wants to make an accommodation with those forces, those honest forces in the civil rights movement that he can make an accommodation with without surrendering to those folks who were just trying to drag Black folks into the Democratic Party so that they could get the funding that would come from the party, and so that they could climb up the ladder. So that's the setting, I believe. It's my interpretation of the setting in which you see Malcolm talking about the ballot or the bullet. He says it's either the ballot or the bullet, but he believes in action on all fronts, and he repeats over and over again different versions of by whatever means necessary. And it's important to understand that the essence of what Malcolm is saying is by any means necessary. That this is a period in which the choice is liberty or death, the choice facing Black folks. That he never says that our struggle should be one that is focused on or even gives much consideration to changing the minds of white people or getting into associations with white people so that they will think that we are safe to be associated with. He never wants to make white people comfortable. He's not talking about forging relations in which everybody is just another American, because he's a nationalist, and a nationalist wants to establish national institutions and for Black people to wield the powers that nations wield, and to do that in the service of Black interests. So holding up our tent into the Democratic Party was the antithesis of what Malcolm X wanted. And so when he said ballot or the bullet, he was not saying that the bullet is our last resort, and we don't want to take it. But if you give us the vote, if you allow us to exercise the franchise, then we will not take these other drastic measures, because the vote was not his goal for Black Americans. You can be outvoted, but if you are outvoted, and that means that you were denied the rights that were owed to you as a human being, he's talking about human rights. That's why he rejected the concept of civil rights. Civil rights is what a government gives you. Human rights is what you deserve and have as a human being, where you don't roll over just because you lost the vote. So if you can advance your agenda, if it does add to Black folks' power to, on selected occasions, use the vote, well then certainly we'll do it. but our fate is never, never going to be decided based upon something that happens once every 4 years at a ballot box in a contest that we might lose in a country that is overwhelmingly white and in which many Black folks want to act white as well. So we want to make that real clear, that Malcolm was not toying with the idea of Black people just becoming some kind of brand of Democrats, or even Black people forming a Black political party that would accept the verdict of an election, even if that election nullified our human rights. The idea that this was just a threat in order for the U.S. white establishment to allow Blacks to become enfranchised, and that the bullet part was just a coercion, and the real goal was just to get Black folks fully represented on the voter rolls. That is a misinterpretation, a distortion. It's the opposite, in fact, of what Malcolm X was really saying. He uses the language of liberation, that it is a foregone conclusion that Black folks deserve the power to govern themselves, not just the privilege to have a say in how other people govern them. And if you don't understand that part about Malcolm, you don't understand Malcolm, and you don't understand what he meant by the ballot or the bullet. But he makes it pretty clear. He says that the vote should be used on selected occasions if we have something to gain potentially in an election. But if we don't have anything to gain, we shouldn't expend the energy. We should put that vote in our pocket. And what that logically leads to is the position that the Black is Back coalition has taken. That yes, we will pursue those opportunities to use the ballot if they might yield results that are equal to all the work that we put in it. But if that's not the case, there's no need to turn out on election day, certainly to expend energy to get other Black folks to turn out on election day, to elect folks who will just deepen or make more legitimate the oppressive rule that has been imposed upon us. And that's very, very important. The reason that we substituted the ballot and the bullet for the ballot or the bullet is to say that the ballot is a tool and the bullet is also a tool. And you might put the ballot in your pocket and not exercise it, but you have to have other weapons, other tools, other ideas, other plans in your pocket all of the time. And so that's what I wanted to discuss this afternoon. It also means that when we do engage in elections, we see the elections differently. Now we have here today Charles Barron. Charles Barron is our esteemed and former Black Panther, most radical and righteous Black politician in New York. He ran some years ago for the Congress, for a congressional seat in Brooklyn against a modern Uncle Tom called Hakeem Jeffries, who was backed by all kinds of Zionist money and other corporate money and had almost the entire white vote virtually in his pocket because the white folks knew who Charles Barron is. But Charles Barron won almost certainly a majority of the Black vote in his district, despite the fact that he was overspent by many multiples by Hakeem Jeffries. As far as I think we should be concerned, Charles Barron won that election. we won our people's vote, and that is what is most important. And that means that Hakeem Jeffries, although he sits on the Congressional Black Caucus, although he is recognized by corporate America as being an up-and-coming, rising Black leader, he is not the Black leader in that congressional district. That leader of that congressional district's Black folks is the one who is sitting right here with us. So when we engage in this voter game, it's not essentially about whether we win or lose the election. It's about whether, having gone through this exercise, having done electoral activity instead of other activity, there is a trade-off. You can't do everything at the same time. The question is, will we have advanced our own agenda among our own people? Will we have increased Black solidarity? Will we have deepened Black consciousness by going through this process? Will we have elevated righteous leadership, even if it loses the ballot, over the Black misleadership class and those servants of white corporate capital? That's what we have to take into consideration if we decide whether we're going to use the ballot. But we always have to have that other thing in our pocket. And I think I'm going to leave it at that today.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Brother Glen Ford, for that presentation. Words for us to live by. To live. Black is back, exactly, to live by. And Black is back. We're going to call up Sister Yeshitela, who's going to give us a report on what we collected earlier. So thank you so very much.
I appreciate everybody who donated earlier to get our donation fundraising call. So I'm going to just go down the types of money that we received. So cash, we received $267. In checks, we received $275, and in pledges, we received $425. So all together, we raised $1,467. If we want to even this out, we're still taking donations. You can see me outside and online as well. You can still make donations. Thank you.
Black is back. Black is back. Black is back. We are going to be getting ready for our next. I
was wrong. For pledges, actually, it was they didn't add up. So for pledges, instead of 425, it was actually 925. That's what it was. So that's what made the 1467.
Thank you so much for that correction. We are now in the process of contacting our next presenter, who cannot be here in person, but she will be giving us a live presentation. And so our brother Kemba's in the process of contacting her. But I just wanted to just ask if you all been able to keep up at all with the election that's currently going on in St. Pete, Florida. The election where we have Ngoma exactly running for mayor and city council, the 6th district of city council. And that is certainly a dynamic, strong, breathing example of what we're talking about when we are talking about the ballot and the bullet and revolutionary politics, because they have put front and center the issue of reparations for the African community and what is going on with the disenfranchisement of Black people. They have made social, political, economic parity front and center with what's going on, and they have pulled no punches at all. And we are going to be having one of the young women who is running for the 6th District Council. She's running as a candidate, Sister Aretha Akili Kenyon. And I always say, when I get older, and even as I am now, and I am definitely older than her, but she is somebody that I want to be like. I've just learned so much watching her and her dynamism and her courage. That's something totally to be emulated. And so when they talk about, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that, no, we have to show them definitely the way by living examples of what's going on now. She will be, we're running a little bit ahead of time, but we will definitely be contacting her and she will be coming forward. But, right. And we will also be having some time a little later on for questions and answers afterwards. So please, any questions that you have or whatever like that, or maybe we might want to take a couple of questions now after Brother Glen, when he had presented. If anybody has any questions now that we might want to take. We have this brother in the background over there who raised his hand. Please step to the mic while we get Sister Akili ready.
I was wondering, I was listening to Ford's presentation, and I was wondering, I was listening to Carl Nelson, BIBC, that's what we used to have.
A little closer to the microphone.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was listening to Mr. Glen Ford's presentation. It's excellent. And I listened to him quite often as well. Others as well addressed. And I also listened to Nelson a lot. And Carl Nelson, as you know, I hope a lot of you know, is a darn good journalist. And really, spoke a lot in he had a presentation speaking on the station out of LA. But listening to you mentioned King Jeffries, and I was wondering how his politics was ruling. Now I have a better understanding of what it was, because I couldn't understand, because Dr. Leonard Jeffries is his uncle, and I know he had been to Kenan a lot. He had visited Kenan, talking about the King Jeffries had. I guess it was Dr. Jeffries' his uncle, and I was trying to figure out where he was coming from. Now I have a better, keener insight. Thank you very much for where he's coming from, because I can understand that all these white folks is gathered around him, and that I knew there had to be some kind of something going on in the background. And I have better clarity of where he was, because I wasn't feeling it too much when I heard him talk on TV and stuff about Hillary Clinton, how great she was.
Oh, my brother, I'm sorry to interrupt, but did we just have a real quick question that you want to ask? We have Sister Akili almost ready to present, so if you just want to just end with your question, and the brother is going forth and answer, and then we'll go forward. Sure. Thank you.
Sure. So my question is, a lot of brothers and sisters go to Kenan, get that information, knowledge, and come back and turn against us. What do you feel about that? Because I feel he's perpetrating a fraud in a sense. You go to Kenan, what Kenan most of black folks know what it means here. Egypt, between black people, and go there, get that knowledge of yourself, who you are, and then you come around. Then you come back and turn it against us, in a sense, for white people. So can you give me some insight on that?
No, it is quite confusing. It is quite confusing to folks who know of Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who is certainly a great man and a nationalist. And see the behavior of, I think it's his nephew, Hakeem Jeffries, who is a tool of the Zionist corporate political establishment in New York City, who is an ally, no, not of anybody in Africa, but of Israel, who is an ally of those who would privatize the public schools. He is a darling and favorite of that crowd. So how is that connected to the politics of Lenny Jeffries? I don't think there's any connection except genetic. But it is confusing, and he does benefit among Black political circles from having that kind of uncle. And of course, being family, nobody disavows the other.
Thank you so much for that. And of course, we'll have time for questions and answers afterwards as well. But right now, we have with us Sister Aretha Akili Kenyon. Erica Akili Kenyon. Erica Akili Kenyon. But we have her right with us right now. She's running a dynamic campaign, and we will hear her wonderful presentation about what's going on in St. Petersburg.
Uhuru, comrade. It is so amazing to be on this call with you as a part of the Limitless. And I can't be here today as a result of these dynamic campaigns, these electoral campaigns that are going on right here in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. And I am currently running for District 6 City Council, and I'm running alongside Jesse Neville for mayor. And Jesse Neville is actually a member and about a decade organizer under the leadership of the Black working class. And he's the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And we have been running these dual platforms that's based on the national Black political agenda that was created and adopted by the Black is Back Coalition. And these very revolutionary campaigns is the very essence of the ballot and the bullet. And bringing the struggle for revolution to the electoral arena as we fight, as the struggle for liberation has fought on every different front, and it's now wielding the tool of the electoral process in the advantage of the Black working class, and so it's just been an extremely amazing process. And actually, we were just out on doors because, as we learned from New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron, that door-to-door wins the war, and that's what we have been doing because these aren't obviously big money campaigns, and they're campaigns of the people, and an entire people's movement has erupted in the city of St. Petersburg for reparations and economic development to the Black community. And these are, it's a brilliant strategy laid forth to us by our very own chairman, Yeshitela. So I want to salute the chairman for just the brilliant strategy of running these two electoral campaigns that are shaking up the grounds, not just in St. Pete, but throughout this country and around the world. And I want to talk about these platforms a little bit more, and how they relate to the national Black political agenda, that which is something that we as the Black community have adopted as our own political agenda. And part of that, the founding, the basis of this platform is reparations and economic development for the Black community. And Jesse's slogan is unity through reparations, and mine is radical times, radical solutions. And for us, we say they're common sense solutions, but they're radical in the face of the status quo and the entire social system. And so what more of a radical solution can you present in the era of the crisis of imperialism than reparations to the Black community? And how great is it in a majority white city to win an election where two candidates can win an election based on reparations to the Black community? Because there's an understanding that the only way forward for anyone is by transforming the system, because that's what we mean when we say reparations. That reparations can't exist in the context of this social system based on colonialism, parasitic capitalism, and imperialism, but it's going to take a complete transformation of the system. It's going to take a revolution. And reparations is another word for revolution. And, it's the founding principle of this campaign because, again, as we know, this entire social system, the city of St. Pete, this entire country, and, even the global economy's basis finds its roots in the enslavement of African people and the genocide of indigenous people and, colonialism across the globe. And so reparations to the Black community as a way to uplift and unite our entire city, has been the message that we've been putting out there because, social and economic justice to the Black community serves to, uplift and unite the entire city. And it stops this policy, these, public policies of, gentrification that falls hand in hand with the police occupation of the Black community. And so that's, the essence of this campaign. And some other points in terms of the relation to the national Black political agenda, Black community control of the police. And of course, and as the banner on the wall up there, Black community control of the police is the just democratic demand for the Black community to have the ability to hire, fire, train, and discipline those who function as police within the Black community. And we definitely see a need for that in the city of St. Pete as we, I don't know if, for anyone who isn't familiar, not only am I running for political office, but I chair a campaign for justice for 3 teenage Black girls that were murdered and drowned by the sheriff's department of Pinellas County in the city. And just this past Sunday, we saw the murder of yet another 3 teenage Black children murdered at the hands of the same Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. And so this is just a glaring understanding as to why we need Black community control of the police and what that looks like. And we're actually able to really build upon that and, say what that's gonna look like for the city of St. Pete and be the model for, different cities, states, and, throughout this entire country. And, Black community control of the police also looks like, the people who should function as police live in that community, and it looks like the destruction of a military occupied relationship that the police have with the Black community. And it looks like, the expulsion of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department out of the city, and also just the, immediate resignation of the head sheriff of Baruti and criminal charges against all of these murderous deputies that are responsible for the murders of Black children here in the city. And so Black community control of the police is being constructed, and it's starting to look, it's looking real, and it's something that it's tangible in our own hands, and it's going to be definitive for what's possible throughout this country. And we also talk about Black community control of schools and having the ability for our community to control the education of our children, because we know that, when we send our children off to these schools, it's nothing but, preparation for prison. And that's always been the case for these, for the schools, because the school system is another function of the state. And it has, the mission to indoctrinate our children and just the people at a very young age into the social system, and it has a responsibility to uphold the social system. So if the social system is built at the expense of African people, of course, then your child cannot receive an education that is suitable to them, because it's just telling them over and over again that the social system should be upheld. And also the whole education system it's never worked for African children. And our kids feel like they're going to prison, and there's cops, police officers on school campuses, and they call them different names. They call them resource officers here in the city of St. Pete. But it's a police occupation on the school campuses, and then you have this hostile administration. So Black community control of schools, we understand, is the only solution. And it's to take the power within our own hands and define a relevant Black curriculum for our children. It's hiring more Black teachers that have the interests of the Black community. And it looks like uplifting and boosting the morale of our children and our entire community, because we have been demonized, dehumanized, and criminalized in all their media outlets and just by this whole system as a whole. The status quo has defined an image of the African community, and Black community-controlled schools will have responsibility to, just completely get rid of that image and control our own narrative. And that definitely starts with education. And with Black community-controlled schools, there's nothing that our children will not be able to do, will not be able to, achieve, and will have the confidence in this world to be able to take on this revolutionary struggle. Because our children aren't even politicized and don't know about revolutionary struggle. They should be participating in the Black Fat Coalition pension. Like, this is something that they should be a part of. But of course, these are not the things that our children will learn because we do not have control over their education. So Black community controlled schools. And we have another point of the platform is an immediate end to gentrification. And I said it earlier, that gentrification comes hand in hand with, police containment. Gentrification is forced removal and dispersal of a community, of a people out of their own community, and it's by any means necessary. So, you see it with the cost of living, rising up, and you're not able to afford it. You see it with the attack of the school systems, and you see it with the police. The police come into your community, and it's a hostile takeover. And brutalizing and murdering, our children and the Black community as a whole, and forcing us out of our own community. And gentrification, this city has always painted progress at the expense of the Black community. So right now, for instance, one of the mayoral candidates who's running against Jesse, Rick Baker, he's a former mayor, he's running for re-election. And he began this process of gentrification, this vicious process that we're seeing today, where downtown, which is the hub of and now they're just being exposed to the people, all your preachers, all of your designated Black leaders that were designated by this system. That whole illusion is being shattered for the people. And, we're not, going with the okey-doke anymore. There's a real movement for power here in the city. And we're taking over, we're going to win the primary.
Back. Sister Kenyon, are you going to be able to be around? We have a little bit of time. Maybe somebody could ask you a question, but I know we're going to have Charles Barron up next, and then we're going to have Brother Zaki Baruti up next. So would you be a... Oh, she doesn't have... No, I understand, but I was just going to say, because we're going to have questions and answers after that, so I want to know if you'd be able to be around for the question and answers as well. Oh, no, I understand, but I'm just saying that you have the chance to also be around for our question and answers afterwards. Would you, when we go to that segment, Mr. Kenyon?
Oh, I'm not sure. I took time to come out today to be able to speak, but there's outreach happening, filmmaking happening, and there's actually a couple of meetings that I have to get to, so.
Okay, so why don't we, if people have any questions, or maybe we can do 2 questions. And, sure.
Ralph Pointer, I started teaching in 1950, so extended experience in the public schools and the private universities. And the big question is, have you studied the budget, the education budget, and the possibility for jobs, and the percentage of students of color that this budget is meant to have?
I had trouble hearing the question. If somebody could.
Budget, do you know how much money there is spent on, supposedly spent, on the education in St. Petersburg, and how many of the students are students of color, and have you considered the jobs that the control of that budget will give to the people in that community?
So, in terms of the school system, it's pronounced county education, and in terms of the resources that are allocated to public schools here in the city of St. Pete, I'm not sure. I know it's millions upon millions of dollars, and I know that majority of the resources, they go to so-called magnet programs on the school campuses. That, magnet program is just another code word for gentrification. And the magnet programs were geared towards white children, and they're created on what used to be predominantly Black campuses. The majority of those resources go to funding those programs, and they're not, obviously they're not geared towards the African students that's on those school campuses. And I've just seen that from my own personal experience going to one of these magnet schools, and their magnet program had their own building, their own resources. It was so completely apart from the whole school itself. So, yeah.
Betty Davis here, New Abolitionist Movement. I just wanted to let you know, Barbara Ralph is responsible for the Black and brown population in New York City being hired as teachers and administrators, and he went to jail for that. That's how we got what portion of the budget we have. We fought for community control of schools, and we did it by literally fighting the cops. There's a tremendous photo of him, New York Times, being attacked by police, and the parents who surrounded him to take back their schools. So that's how you get community control. They don't just give up. In New York City, the 23rd largest budget in the world. And you are in Florida where there's a tremendous Black population. And so the analysis of capitalism is that we have a federal system. 2/3 of your budget is coming from the federal government, allocated on the lunch, people eligible for free lunches. And the portion of the people in Florida who are eligible for these free lunches are Black people. And what they're doing is misdirecting the funds. The community control of schools means that you take it by any means necessary. So it's an analysis of capitalism, but it is also a question of the ballot and the bullet. You have to fight them for it. Take back your schools by denying the Europeans more than their fair share of your money. They can't have our jobs in our neighborhood and their jobs in their neighborhood too. We have the right, and that's what community control means.
How are we doing with the time? Right on time. Oh, okay, Sister Kenyon, did you want to respond to that?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to unite that the struggle that must continue, and I just say that the Uhuru movement at one day, at one point in time, actually protested every single day for when a black teacher was harassed on one of the school campuses here at Gibbs High School, and then a child was, attacked, slapped by a white teacher, and the Uhuru movement came out and fought back against that and demonstrated every single day. So I definitely know that, that we definitely have to, engage in a serious struggle and just fight back the system on every front. And also just in terms of Black community controlled schools, that would look like empowering and hiring more Black teachers. And just to speak to, the question of having, that I think it was, white people having jobs in our neighborhoods and jobs in their neighborhoods. And, I don't even see the jobs in my neighborhood. And I know that it's a lot of African people having to get bussed out from our communities to work on that we didn't have the ability to use the electoral process before, after they murdered all of our leaders in the 60s and crushed our movement. That the movement is here. The 60s was a dress rehearsal, and the revolution is happening right now.
All right, Uhuru. And just before you close out, could you please tell us how we can support your campaign? Do you have a website or something, or what can people do to support you all over?
Right on. So in order to support these campaigns, again, go to akilayfordistrict6.com. You can even go to justineville.com. Donate whatever you can to these campaigns to make just the necessary things happen. Like we're trying to get a TV commercial out there. So if you can, go to these two websites, donate. And also on a national level, you can be a part of the phone banking team if you want to volunteer, and you can sign up on those websites as well. So thank you all so much. And Uhuru, Black is back.
Uhuru, Black is back. Thank you so much. And just know we got your back, and we will do whatever we can to make sure that people like you are elected. We are so proud. Uhuru! Uhuru! Hopefully we can somehow work that in. But next presentation is going to be by the next presentation right after Sister Kenyon, Brother Charles Barron, revolutionary, in-person living example of how a politician should be. When I first heard of Charles Barron, he had been elected city council, and he said to people when he got into that city council seat, take these pictures down of these enslavers and these colonialists. I will not be there with them. He made them take them down. That's how I heard about it.
Thank you very much. Uhuru, brothers and sisters. Black power. Black power. All the time. I just want to thank the Black is Back Coalition for inviting us here to present today. Thank Brother Ford. I always learn a lot when he speaks, puts things in his proper perspective. And also to the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Brother Yeshitela. I wish him speedy recovery, because he's always gives an excellent analysis. I wanted to say this about the election, about the Jeffries election. He did edge me out in the black community, but this is what happened. They redrew the lines.
But they do.
They redrew the lines. My district, congressional district, was 65% black.
Yes.
They redrew the lines and brought in Howard Beach, which is a white community, and they brought in Coney Island, which is a white community. So it went down to 53% black. I got 13,000 votes and 95% of them were black.
Yes.
And the way they edged us out is during the last week of the campaign, Barack Obama came into town and they took a picture with Barack Obama and sent it to all of our people. And then in my community, they told people that, you know, Barron has been doing good. You don't want him to leave y'all and go to Washington. Then this is the one that I didn't even believe. I didn't see this tactic coming myself. The last week of the campaign, I saw a big picture of me in the Post and the Daily News. And at the top of it, it says, KKK supports Charles Barron. Now, I thought they were joking. But on the internet, they had David Duke recording his support of me because he didn't like the sellout Zionist Hakeem Jeffries. David Duke. So you know what? But then all the unions, every last union, they didn't even know him. 7 newspapers endorsed him. And it wasn't endorsed Hakeem Jeffries, he's the greatest. It was a Stop Charles Barron campaign. So every paper. So he edged me out in the black community, but your point is still accurate in that 95% of my vote was black. It was over 13,000. And what they did, and see, to show you how ridiculous it is, what was I gonna do in the House of Representatives? 435 members, Republicans in control. What was I gonna do? Stop them from giving money to Israel? What was I gonna do? The idea, that's why they fear you. It's the idea, it's the seed that we're planting in this generation. Uhuru. I wanted to bring you greetings, as I always say, from the Big Apple. They never gave us a bite. New York City. New York City has 8.2 million people. 2 million of them, us, Africans. 2 million Latinos. About 1 million Asians. The overwhelming majority of people in New York City are Black, Latino, and Asian. Whites are minorities. When I was running for mayor for a hot second, just to get some name recognition, they said, so how are you gonna get the minority vote to go with you when you're so radical? And how are you gonna get the minority vote? And I said, the minority vote? You mean the whites? He said, no, the minority vote. I said, yes, the whites. I'm not looking to get any white votes. If the majority votes for me, I could win. And they call our districts the majority minority districts.
Yeah.
Ain't that some foolishness? Look, you're the minority, we're the majority. So how do you be the majority minority? What we decided to do in East New York is about 150,000 people. East New York has a area median income of about $32,000, $34,000 for a family of 3. Poverty rate of about 30%. Police brutality high, unemployment high. We decided that we needed some power. The difference between power and influence, we get confused on.
That's right.
When you have to march, demonstrate, scream, and holler to get somebody to make a decision for you, if you succeed at that, that's influence. When you can make that decision yourself, that's power. So I saw in my East New York, they wanted to build a movie theater. And I said, some of the Redstone from Viacom went to the most racist, vile mayor in the history of America, Rudolph Giuliani, and said to Giuliani, I want that area in East New York to build a movie theater. He then went to the city council member of that area before me and said, no problem. So here I am outside demonstrating, 200 people, media all over the place. Tractor came by, I laid on the ground, said, over my dead body, you're not putting another brick up here. I'm talking bad. They waited for me to get up. The next morning, not only did they put a brick up, they built a whole wall. So I said, something ain't right here, something's not right here. Come to find out, the city council member was home in her air-conditioned house, signing off on the project while I was demonstrating. Because the power of the city council, is that any city-owned land that any developer wants to develop on, the mayor can't even give it to him. The city council member has to sign off on it. That's power. The mayor doesn't pass the budget, he presents it, proposes it. The city council passes the budget. The city council has oversight over every city agency. I was a city council member for 12 years. If any commissioner of any agency refused to come to a hearing, I could subpoena him. The city council also passes all the city laws. They didn't want a Black Panther in the city council. They used to call me the ex-Black Panther, so take off the X. I'm still a Panther to my heart. And I did little things just to make sure they know who I was. Everybody said, Charles, tone it down after you get in. After you get in, then go crazy. You can't go crazy now. Be cool, put on a shirt and tie. I said, no, I don't wear shirts and ties. They asked me, they said, why don't you wear shirts and ties? I said, because I'm not a white man, I'm an African. And I want to dress like the men in the East. So I don't wear shirts and ties. Then I don't salute the flag and do the pledge. So, they did. In the city council, they never had to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so I came in. Then when I came in, the very next year, everybody has to now get up for the pledge. So they thought, with all of the media there with me getting up, sitting down, that would hurt me. And look at him, he don't even want to stand for the pledge. So they asked me the next day, so why didn't you stand for the pledge? I said, because my mama told me don't support lies. That's what my mama said. So I'm listening to my mama. She said, don't listen to no lies. It's not so. Then they put that out there. Barron, not pledging. The Black Panther. And then, when I was in the city council, we had 51 city council members. So they had me sitting way in the back. And they was doing the rolls. So they finally said, Barron, I said, the Black Panther's in the back. This is going to change. This was my first meeting. Then I got up and they thought I was going to do something to the new speaker. I had a hammer and I had some picture hangers. So I got up and I'm walking toward the speaker, all the security came. And I said, Speaker Miller, put some Black men's pictures up on that wall. I'm tired of white men. I can't legislate. I can't concentrate. And those were like big, life-size white men pictures. I said, I can't focus. I need something up there to look like me. Look at him, he's looking at me. The next week, I was in the second row, and then in the prestigious red room where they have all the press conferences, they had a picture of Adam Clayton Powell, because Adam Clayton Powell was the first Black city council member in New York City. Those were the minor things, superficial things. Then, I came in the speaker's office one day and I said, Speaker Miller, I need to secure the red room. I have an African president coming. He said, what? That's great. He said, yes, I could. What date is it available? He gave me the date. And he said, by the way, who's the president? I said, Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. He said, what? Charles, why would you do that to me? I said, what are you talking about? Do it to you. Why would you do it? This ain't your house. This is the people's house. I didn't even think about you when I did it. So then he told all of the council members, don't go. You know, don't go to Robert Mugabe's reception with Charles Barron. President Mugabe comes up. Now we in the red room. He didn't want him in the chambers upstairs where we meet, because that's the most prestigious room. So I'm in the red room. 18 members of the city council show up. The mayor, Bill de Blasio, he showed up then. And then when he ran for mayor, they reminded him, he said, I made a mistake. I should have never done it. He flipped on that. But Robert Mugabe came in and I said, you know, it's kind of hot down here and it's a little crowded. Let's go upstairs. So the staff person said, no, you can't. I said, you are on staff. You don't tell me what I can't do. We brought him upstairs, and the significance of that is when Robert Mugabe and other leaders come to America and they can't meet with any elected officials or they can't meet in any official government building, when they go back to Zimbabwe, the opposition says, look at that. Your president has no respect. He has to go to a church in the black community where D12, an older plumber, and them would host him because he can't get any official. So he was able to go back and say, I was in the chamber of the #1 city in the world. And President Mugabe couldn't have thanked us more for that. But we decided in East New York, and this is why I'm here, and we're going to be in Florida, and wherever, St. Louis, wherever we have to be, we have to get revolutionaries elected to the local city government office. We can talk all the stuff we want. These neo-colonial black puppets, they're not afraid of you if you can't beat them. They don't care what you say. You can call them Ain't Your Mama, Sambo, cuss them out. If you can't beat them, they could care less. They'll take your criticism, or some of them will smile and grin at you. They'll meet with you. They might even fund a little program. But as long as you can't beat them, they could care less. So when I found out in New York City that they built that thing in my district and she was home doing her thing, I said, that's the seat I want. I went, like I said, door to door wins the war. I knocked on doors. I went in the beauty salons. I went in the barber shops. Brothers was out there playing dice. Hey, how you doing? I hung out with them, walking the streets. I made sure that every meeting, we had school boards then. I'm fired up at every meeting, organizing around issues, around the police stuff. And every time something happened in my district, they didn't call elected officials. They came for me. And I made sure I used the media strategy. We got New York 1 and Brooklyn 12. Those are two stations that loot. They loot the news all day long. So you get on channel 4, 5, 6, I got a lot of that too. But that's like 10, 15 seconds. Yes, it's a lot of people, but if you get on New York 1 or Brooklyn 12 in New York, they loot the story all day long. So I made sure that we got our message out through that. The first time I didn't get it, I got 4,000 votes. I got 4,000 votes. The machine got 6,000. I didn't even know what I was doing and got 4,000 votes. And then when I learned, you don't have to have a whole lot of money because money doesn't vote, people vote. They're always going to have more money than you, always. So they out fundraised me. The next 4 years, I stayed out there. As a matter of fact, after I got my 4,000 votes, you'd have thought I won. I made up a flyer, put up posters. Thank you, community. 4,000 votes. They said, did you win? Did you win? I said, I got 4,000 votes. Did you get to see? No, but I got 4,000 votes. We're on our way. By the time 2001 came, the whole machine came at me again. And it had this candidate. It was a New York Knicks basketball player, real nice guy. I won by 300 votes. 4,900 to 4,600 and got in the city council. Then we developed an organization called Operation Movement. The biggest problem in the black community is not Donald Trump. It's not the Tea Party. It's not any white boys. It is black, neo-colonial, Democratic Party puppets. Puppets. That is the biggest problem every black community is controlled, the local institutions, by black Democrats. They're the ones that were more vicious toward me than anybody. They're the ones that put out the KKK and all that stuff. Stop Barron. Stop, that was my name after a while. My wife woke me up and said, how you doing? I'm like, this is Stop Barron. How are you? Everything, it is the black neo-colonial puppets. Yes. They're the ones you got to fight. And in our communities, the Democratic Party machine is behind them. Yes. They can run Donald Duck and beat you. You know, while we're trying to get deep and ideological, and we should, because I put it out there all the time, you better get very practical and get known. Get some name recognition. They can run Donald Duck and beat you. All they have to do is put Donald Duck on posters, call up robocalls, 50,000 robocalls from Donald Duck, do a mailing to everybody in the district from Donald Duck. On election day, have 10 people in front of every election polling site. So don't forget to vote for Donald Duck. Go in front of the churches every Sunday. Don't forget Donald Duck. Get all the black elected officials. Donald's the man. My husband got Donald Duck in the White House now. They could beat you with that. So we beat them at their own game. We knew how to do a mailing, do all of that stuff. But after I won in 2001, took over the city council seat, they backed up. And then I poured it on. You know, the more I won, the more I said revolutionary, radical, tear it down, talk all night and shit. The more I did that, the more I won, the more I got in their face, the more stuff I said. You know, if they said yes, I said no. If they said sit up there, I sat over there. Whatever they said, I did the opposite. Just to keep it, you know, just to let them, ain't nobody afraid of you. You know, they, oh, you was a Panther. You tell them you was a Panther. I said, that's right. I went to all the senior citizen centers and said, I was Black Panther. They said, oh, that's good. And you know the group that fed the children breakfast. Right, mother? They said, yes, we remember that. I was at a reparations rally in 2002, and I got on stage and I said, I want to slap the first white man from my black mental health. I said I'm going to do that. I forgot I was a politician. I forgot all the cameras were there. When I got back to New York, it was all over the paper. Expel, kick him out. He's a racist. He wants to slap white people. A white man called me up, and you Charles Barron? I said, yes. He said, I'm a white man from Denver. Come slap me. I said, you sadomasochistic fool. Go slap yourself. I'm busy. Then when I got on a radio program, they said, Councilman Barron, we had a report from Associated Press. Did you say you wanted to slap the first white man for your black mental health? And tell him it's a black thing? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. They got silent. Yep, that's what I said. And they said, could you explain that? I said, just to mess with them. I said, yes, it was a case of oratorical improvisation and black hyperbole. He said, what? I said, oratorical improvisation and black hyperbole. He said, what's a black hyperbole? I said, well, sir, a hyperbole is a figure of speech. You know, you got metaphors, you got similes, and you got hyperbole. That's a gross exaggeration. I know what hyperbole is. It's about to ask me. He said, what's a black hyperbole? I said, oh, well, when my mama says to me on a Sunday, boy, if you get on my last nerve, I will slap you into Tuesday. That doesn't mean that Monday wasn't going to happen. That's a hyperbole. That's a hyperbole. And then he said, well, tell me another one. I said, my mama said to me, I brought you in this world. That is not my mama's commitment to murder. That's a hyperbole. So he said, so you were just kidding? I said, no, my mama wasn't playing with me and I ain't playing with y'all. Let's do it. In DC, New York, we wiped out the Democratic Party club. It does not exist. We took the city council seat. My wife then ran for the state assembly, and she won the state assembly seat. So we had the state assembly seat and the city council seat. Then you know they have them district leaders.
Yeah.
I'm the district leader, my wife's the other district leader. If you can hold them both. So we had those 4 seats. Then they got judicial delegates, Operation Power, our Black Radical organization. We have all 8 judicial delegates. The community board, you know, we have community boards. We got the chair of the community boards and all the top position on the community board in my district. And then we ran this Muslim sister for judge, and our district judge, we won that too. We wiped them out. They don't exist. Now they're trying to come back. See, they will never commit suicide. So you better keep going. They wait for you to have any weakness. And because of that, East New York is not gentrified. You know, the power of the city council, when a developer sits down with me and says he's going to build me beautiful, affordable housing in my district and pulls out all of these pretty pictures, I tell him, put the pictures away. Affordable to who?
Right.
How are you defining affordability?
Right.
So he said, oh, okay, I heard about you, Ms. Glen. I didn't mean to upset you. Well, you did. Put the pictures away. What's affordable? He said, according to the HUD, it's 80% of the AMI, the area median income. 80% of the AMI of New York City. So I said, do you know what 80% of AMI of New York City is? I'm yelling at him, right? He said, yeah. What is it? He said, it's $64,000 a year for a family of 4. Do you know my neighborhood AMI? He said, no. You're coming into my office telling me you're going to build affordable housing for my neighborhood, and you don't even know the neighborhood AMI. This meeting is terminated. I made him go out. I made him wait 3 weeks. He came back. I said, so what's the AMI? He said, $33,000 for a family. Right. So that ain't happening. Let me tell you what's going to happen. 60% of your housing is going to be for those of us making $25,000 and $35,000 a year. That's 60%. Another 20% is going to be for those who are making 35 to 40, and then the other 10, 15% is going to be for those of us who might be making 60. You got that? That's affordable. Right. So in 6,000 units that came into my beloved East New York, 99% affordable for my district. East New York is the only community, according to the Daily News, who hates me, that had an increase of 13.2% in the Black population in our district, East New York. We are not gentrified. Harlem is gentrified, Bed-Stuy is gentrified, Crown Heights is gentrified, but East New York is still Black. And that's why I talk the way I talk, because I don't have to worry about any white votes. I don't have to get the white vote. So I want to close it out with a tape. I want to show you all this tape. This was my last speech at the city council after 12 years. And then I want to show you some of the things that we actually did. We renovated parks and new schools, 2 new $80 million schools. We got, and another thing for revolutionaries. My wife and I together, we're hiring about 10, 15 people. Paula Plummer, who's the chairperson of the December 12th movement, a radical revolutionary movement, is my chief of staff. You understand? Nice salary and some health benefits. We got revolutionaries on staff, because y'all know that's the problem. We talk all this stuff and can't find a job.
That's right.
And then $5 million a year, we get to renovate parks and stuff. $5 million. $500,000 a year to give out the program. So we tell radicals, dust off, get it together, but don't come with us when you ain't got nothing together. Don't have a lawyer, accountant to tell you, you're gonna help me out. No, I'm not. Because I'm not going to jail, man. Get the stuff together. But we could really, with local politics, city council and state assembly seats, we could take over every black community that is a majority black. She's having a hard time in St. Petersburg. This is not majority black. But what about those areas where it's majority black? Get out Sambo and Ain't Your Mama. Y'all got to take them out. And not just call them names. Take them out. Take them out. I just wanted to show y'all this page. This was my last meeting, but it's also a part of some of the work that we've done in East New York. I don't know whether they were happy to see me go or what. To my colleagues in my 12 tumultuous years with you, you've been very controversial. And I tried to keep you in line, but it was very difficult. I do want to say this, that I voted no for so many of your projects. And I will be voting no on some more today. However, I do appreciate that when my projects came before you, you voted yes.
Here we are in your office. I noticed you have a stack of the various awards and stuff you've got. You're just sort of piled up over here. And instead you got all these maps and plans and models.
Right, you know, I wanted to really turn this into an urban planning room. Because when I first came in, I had a vision for East New York. You know, East New York has a history of having burnt out housing, and arsonists burnt it down to get the insurance, and so that they could leave whites left and blacks and Latinos now make up 80–90% of East New York. So we wanted to rebuild East New York with housing, with gardens, with parks, with new schools, and that's what you're going to see today.
Okay, so we're here across from Linden Plaza, the Linden Houses, a gigantic complex here. And you said this used to be a completely vacant lot, a lot of crime, a lot of problems.
Desolate. They have to walk through this park to get to the train station across Conduit. And now look at it.
You put a lot of money into this?
Yes, I put about $4 million in. The Department of Parks put about $3–4 million in, and another group put about $1.5 million. So we teamed up on this and developed this whole area.
In a lot of ways, this is politics 101, right? I mean, you've got hundreds, if not thousands of votes, right? People right here in the complex, and you took what was an eyesore and turned it into an amenity for them. Yes. At considerable expense, by the way, and as well as brought in some new housing, so that's a couple hundred new voters and so forth. Is that the sort of the basic politics that has?
Well, you know, being straight up with you, I don't even see it like that. To be honest with you, I don't think about votes when I'm doing this. I knew children didn't have a place to play, and that was my priority. But votes, I could have gotten those votes probably whether I did this or not. You know, just campaigning hard and doing some work. So my motivation was really, if you're going to get in office, do the job.
Okay, what is the name of this park?
Well, formally, I put emphasis on formally. This is Gershwin Park, also known as Linden Park. We call it Sonny Carson Park. The mayor can't tell me I can't name a park after our activists. Okay, so now what we did with this park, this was all dirt. And I will put $3.6 million into this.
We are in PS 166, and this is one of the projects that you were most proud of.
Very proud of this. You know, we contributed $500,000 to this to get this renovated because we know that culture and we know recreation inspires academic achievement and academic success. This is a state-of-the-art recording studio.
And this is connected, this computer lab is connected. I have to tell you, I see 30 iMacs here. I've been in a bunch of computer labs in schools. I haven't seen any quite as fancy.
All right, for East New York. This is one of the, we want to top-of-the-line stuff. They help them with the music theory, so it's not just them going in there and just messing around. We're very proud of this. I have these kinds of science labs and computer labs in most of the schools in my district.
One of the things we've learned from visiting some of your colleagues in the council is that when a council member says put millions in, that's often a multi-year process of trying to get it into a member item and then calling the agencies to make sure that they
Exactly. So that's why I'm concerned when people come in to take others' place in office. They gotta know how this process works, or else you can give out. If you're a politician, which I am not, I'm an elected activist. If you're a politician, then you spread your capital money around so much so you can get reelected.
but then you don't have any projects built because it's not enough. So I get about 2-3 million in capital money. I put it all in one project.
Okay, so this is the model. You showed us the model of this on the desk in your office, and this is the actual school, and it's just about ready to open. Or is it open now?
It's open. It's open, and we have a science in there. We have a writing school that's coming. It's high school and middle school. And this was an $80 million project.
Okay, so where are we now? This looks like the center of a suburban mall, frankly.
Right. You wouldn't even believe you were in East New York. This is the Elton Street corridor. This is a town center. A part of the planning was to be able to have mixed uses. If you see on the top, we have the solar panels because we want to bring down the energy costs. And then on the bottom is retail. So all along the corridor on the bottom of this, we're bringing in economic development to go along with the housing. You can't just bring people in and housing and not have.
Sure, they need a dry cleaners, they need a table store.
So I just wanted to come before you to say that I will always be Black, radical, revolutionary. I will always be a socialist, anti-capitalist, imperialist. I went to Cuba. I went to Venezuela. I went to Zimbabwe. Brought the president to you and you didn't appreciate it. Robert Mugabe, he's taking the land back from whites in Africa. For all of those who are my heroes, Evo Morales of Bolivia, these are my heroes. And Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, those are my heroes. The Black Panther Party and all of the members and the political prisoners. I wanted to come to you to say, that's who and what I am, and that's what I will always be. Today, thank you very much. So I just wanted So I didn't want to talk all that stuff to y'all, and I want y'all to see I said it to the white people too. So y'all think I'll be talking stuff in front of y'all because it's safe, but I say it there too. So I just want to encourage us. You know, I was supposed to be at a reparation piece. I have a bill, and I gave out the newspapers, Operation Power newspaper. That's our organization. Show you all the stuff we've done, and then I also have my newsletter from the State Assembly, and in that newsletter, you'll see my bill on reparations, because we have a reparations bill for New York State. It was one of the largest slaveholding states in the Union. It wasn't just a Southern thing. So since we're waiting on John Conyers to release it from Congress, every state can do a reparations bill like y'all did in Chicago here and other places, but we could do it state by state. New York sold us, they worked us, they owe us. Pay us our reparations. Now! Now! Straight ahead, y'all. Thank you very much.
Reparations now! And that is a living, breathing example of how to be a revolutionary Black politician, non-sellout. There's no more that is no excuse for anybody else. It just isn't. The next person that we will be bringing up is Brother Zaki Baruti. He is with the Universal African People's Organization of St. Louis, Missouri. Uhuru!
Uhuru. Assalamu alaikum. Power to the people. Power to the people. Yeah. Let me just say first and foremost, let's give another round of applause to our brother. And I truly pray that you heard him clearly. For those of us who say that those who are in power now that look like us, and it's not about the business of us. It's too easy just to criticize and not work to replace it. That's the task that's before us. Let me just say for today, I am truly excited about the theme for the Black is Back Coalition annual conference. As we look at this theme, it's a real deep theme. The ballot and the bullet, election, war and peace in the era of Trump. In fact, because there's been so many things that's occurring. First of all, let me digress. I'm sorry, let me digress. In the spirit of Brother Barron, one of my very first active involvement in the community in terms of organizing our people came out of Chicago. I'm based in St. Louis. And how did it come out of Chicago? In 1969, Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were murdered here in Chicago.
Right.
It touched me to such an extent, having been a student at Southern Illinois University, Evansville, and being part of the Black student movement and seizing the chancellor's office at that time when I was in college and one of the spokespersons for the BSA, Black Student Association. And then the next year, being touched by the brutal murder of the FBI and the Chicago police raiding their homes 5 in the morning, it touched me just like what happened to Mike Brown touched a lot of us. So to that end, I organized a major march in the city I was living in at that time, East St. Louis, Illinois, and became one of the people who would distribute the Black Panther Party newspaper both in East St. Louis and St. Louis. So it's out of Chicago that I owe my activism and the whole thing of transforming my mind in terms of knowing that there needs to be a revolution to change the wretched conditions of our people. So to that end, also, I'm a man that dreams all the time. I got, it's just constant dreaming. And so on the way up here today, or last night, I had this heavy dream. And I want to give you the scenario of the dream. First of all, I saw Trump at a press conference with a brother who was an FBI agent in the background. And in my dream, this agent, he reviewed what happened in terms of the slavery of our people. And then he did some study as to how this United States government went in and destroyed the society of Libya with a task of killing Gaddafi, whom I had an opportunity to actually meet in Libya. Then this same FBI agent did some study of the Lancaster Accords in terms of Zimbabwe, where they backtracked in terms of helping to support the land reclamation. And now he studied that this government put sanctions on Zimbabwe, helping the everyday people of Zimbabwe to get rid of Mugabe, whom I've had the pleasure to also meet in Zimbabwe. Then the same agent did some study during the Clinton period, where he saw that to get out of the whiskey scandal, he bombed Sudan's only pharmaceutical plant, which I got an opportunity to meet the president of the Sudan, Omar Bashir. Then he studied what happened in Nicaragua when Ronald Reagan supported the contraband and their pushing of drugs, along with George Bush Sr. And I got an opportunity to meet that president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega. So he had this, again, this is my dream for anybody who may be an FBI agent up here. That same FBI agent on public TV, when Donald Trump was speaking, he came up and smacked him aside the head and put a bullet in his head. That was a dream. That was my dream. That was my dream. And I only say that in real life. One of my close comrades, a good friend of mine named Cookie Thought, because the community in which he was living in kept harassing him because he was a black businessman. To such a level, he said he couldn't take it no more. He went up into the Kirkwood City Hall and shot and killed about 5 of those white racists along with the police officers. And as an organization, we supported his mother who said that he had to do what he had to do. That was one of the proudest moments of a black woman standing with her son. I say all of that because also we have to salute when we talk about the bullet, because this is real. This ain't no play thing. It ain't playing. We need some net turnover. We have to salute a brother named Michael Johnson in Dallas. He went over the edge. They are pushing us over the edge. So we can never take the equation of the bullet. But at the same time, we do have the means of the ballot. And if we are not pushed over the cliff to take the actions that I just cited, then we need to seize some power. Because it is madness. And this is what my subject is supposed to be about: proportionate political representation. And what does that mean? All I would like for you to do, if you will, is here at the Universal African Peoples Organization, we published this publication called the African News World. If you would go to page 7, so kindly. And as you turn into page 7, also I want to give you a couple of updates what's happening in St. Louis. I don't know if you have heard it on national news yet. We have a major case similar to Laquan Donald case here in Chicago, where we had another racist police killing of a young brother back in 2011 that was swept under the rug until we found out about it and has brought it forth. And there's a major trial going on a racist police officer named Jason Shockley, who was chasing this brother. Chase. And he's heard on the radio scan, we're going to catch this motherfucker and kill him. And 45 seconds later, the brother was dead. And the white boy who did the killing asked for a trial judge rather than a jury. And bench trial. And this same racist, and that speaks to white power that we're dealing with in this day and age. Let's be clear. Because this elder white judge has got to make a decision as to whether or not he's going to convict this white police officer, who, by the way, graduated from West Point, went to Iraq, won a lot of awards in his police academy. Now you tell me, are we going to get any justice? And if we don't get justice, then it's a test of our manhood and womanhood. Let's get ready to come down the pipe. So, going back to the paper, I hope you're with me. In the paper, what we're saying is that as a people, on page 7, we must have a bold vision and action needed to address proportionate political representation. And what is proportionate political representation? It simply means that whatever percentage we are as a people on the national, state, and local levels of government, then we should have that percentage of political power. Especially if we pay taxes. Because there are people who make decisions as to how to spend your dollar. And that's why we have to salute Charles Barron, because he set an example. Right? He set an example. But the reality, 2017, where do we stand? There are over 511,000 publicly elected positions in this country. Of that number, we only have about 14,000. I say about 12,000 here. I'm just giving take another extra 1,000, which translates to what? 2 or 3%. If we had 13% of that number, we'd be at least 66,000 plus. Now, what would that do for us? First of all, most of those positions pay a salary. Then secondly, most of those positions award contracts. Your dollars. But the reality is when they award contracts today, it goes to other folks outside of our community, and they're able to feed their families, and we're not able to feed our families. Mad. The other level, what we say here, is let's look at the most powerful decision makers in this country. The House of Senate, 100 members. Of that 100, today, 2017, only 3 are people of color, when we should have at least 13. And they may be suspects. But even if they're suspects, then we got to have somebody like yourself that stand up and challenge them. Then if you look at the governorship, and we have a lot of people in the South, we really should be seizing state power in the South. Of 50 governors, not one look like us. But let me break it down on a local level. Our organization was very involved in the Ferguson rebellion. And I actually lived in the complex where Mike Brown was murdered back in the 70s, but they wouldn't renew my lease because I was raising a lot of hell and trying to organize an attendance down there. And at the time I left, I thought it was predominantly, at that time it was predominantly white in Ferguson. But when Mike was killed, I'm still thinking it's majority of white. But statistically, I found out that Ferguson was 67% black at the time of his murder. At the time of his murder, the Ferguson City Council had 6 members and only 1 was black. That's why I want to talk about proportionate political representation. But as an extension of us not having power, in Ferguson at the time of the murder of the brother, of the police force was 53 and only 3 were black. That's a direct political outcome. That we're paying folks to come into our community and harass us by brutalizing us as well as ticketing us, because in the state of Missouri every year they do a study and they know every year black people are disproportionately stopped on the streets. So we're paying those fines. Let me give you even, that happened in Ferguson. Today, because we can really have another heavy battle in the St. Louis area, in a community called Bell Fountain. we define victory. Because even though did not win the the votes, we were still victorious because we were able, because the general election, I ran in the primary, in the general election was a real super tight race. And the Democratic nominee was forced to seek our support, but for our support, he had to publicly endorse what we call the Black agenda. But that might have led to him losing too. But anyway, I'm just saying that we cannot just give our votes to folks without accountability for them as relates to supporting our cause. So as we look on the paper, I'm going to be bringing my remarks to a close. We got to have a vision.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
2018, that's about 33 U.S. Senate seats up for election. 30, a number of governorships. I got them listed here. Wouldn't it be deep? Wouldn't it be so deep that we deputize everybody who's from different states, that for the United States Senate seat for 2018, that you are running for a United States Senator and your top platform is reparations. Your top platform is Black community control of the police. Your platform is that you'll set free all of the non-violent offenders who they lock up all across America that look like us. Can you imagine if we had that all across America and what that would say? You know, along with winning some real serious local elections. That's especially if we're not going to use the bullet. So that's where I really appreciate Brother Malcolm El-Shabaab. He was saying, we're saying the ballot and the bullet, but he had took out the ballot or the bullet. And my last closing statement, my actual last. Oh, and one other thing, in the bottom of the paper, we got statistics, because we just had a race for America where white power was able to divide folks, the Black community, because we had super number of Black candidates running and one white candidate, and the white candidate won. Yeah. Divide and conquer. But our organization, being part of electoral politics, went and supported the candidate that we had supported earlier against the racist white mayor, the brother named Lewis Reed, and we have the statistics of how we went into the community and won the 4 wards that we were assigned to win. So it's not just saying something, practice what you preach. And also, during the Ferguson uprising, just to get a sense of who I am, when we closed down the streets of Clayton, which is the county seat for St. Louis County, which is Ferguson, and we sent up a note to the racist county prosecutor that we want to have a meeting with him. So we sent up 5 names, 2 Christian ministers, a Muslim minister, Minister Akbar Muhammad, a member of another organization for Black Struggle, as well as myself. They sent a note down saying, we'll meet with everybody but Zaki Baruti. So, as well as in another election trying to get the racist mayor out, they sent out a last-minute email blast to many of the white voters, and they said that our candidate, Lewis Reed, if he wins, people, and they named about 5 folks, would be running the city, and one of those people was myself also. So I said, and last but not least, we were pushing at the state senate for community control of the police some years back. And the head of the police union, who had a talk program, used to crack on a sister named Jamala Rogers and myself. I'll never forget this. I was testifying on behalf of the deal. He came after me and testified against, and you know what he said? The reason I'm against that bill is because I keep the rules for it. But I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because God is calling upon every Black person to stand up for our children and our women because they're killing us too much. I'm sick and tired of it. I don't know about you. I'm sick and tired of it. And that's why I said going back to the ballot and the bullet. Right. We're going to have some young men who's like that brother, Michael Johnson in Dallas. If you can't take no more, then stop just talking about you. And turn your guns away from us until the real enemies of our people. God bless you. Power to the people. I'm sorry, one other thing. We do ask a dollar donation on our paper, and that dollar donation that you give to us will directly go into the Black Coalition as part of our duties. Okay. Or you can give it to myself or a couple of the members right here on the front row. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have actually we're at the portion for questions and answers. So if we have anybody who has any questions, please come up to the mic. I'm also going to ask people to be very conscientious about the time as well. To the extent that you can, please frame something as a question. And so we have about 10 minutes after this. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, is this just this?
Whatever question. Exactly.
Okay. Yes, I was just.
Oh, we have a 25 minutes for this section. So please, we want to really get into some strong conversations. So let's start with the question.
No, for the last speaker, I was hoping that it was an oversight in your platform, suggested platform, that we just support prisoners who were not involved in violent actions, because our political prisoners were involved in just violent actions, and we must do that first, above all. I would hope that I left it very clear.
Yeah, that was the oversight.
Thank you, sir. Love you. All right.
I did answer it for you, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you regarding the voting aspect of it. Have you ever heard of the 1 million conscious Black voters and contributors, Dr. James Cleveland and Brother Afrikan? And I just want to know from your insight, both of you, what do you think about that organization? I'm a member of that organization. I think that we really don't have too many places to go in terms of a platform of that nature that seeks reparations and want us as the vote as a Black people to garner to galvanize us to make a change in this country for Black folks, economically and politically, with all the major platforms. Can you share? Have you ever heard of that organization?
Yes. In fact, we held a National Black Political Leadership Conference in October. And out of that particular conference, Brother Donnie Bradford from Tennessee represented the 1 million conscious Black voters, as well as another member in attendance. As well as just earlier this year, I was with both of Jim Clinton and Elikya in South Carolina. They had put together a meeting of what they had said, old men. I said, not old men, wise men. So yes, most definitely. I heard of them online, but to be straight up and honest with you, just having more Black voters or more Black elected officials, it's not one of my goals. Mine is to have Black radical revolutionary elected officials.
Because, you know, when you add to the roll, that's why I don't even do voter registration in my district, because if they register, they're gonna register for the Democratic Party. While we do use the Democratic primary as a strategy, see, we tell our people in our district, we know that most of our people, 95% of our people are gonna be registered Democrats. So while we're developing an independent party, most of us should be a part of, or use the Democratic primary as a strategy, because your people blindly vote Democratic in November. So when November comes, I don't care what your name is, they're not even gonna see it. They're gonna go Democratic down the line. And that's why the Democratic Party is angry with us. They call me up every time saying, you know, you're an incumbent, you're a Democrat, we'll do a fundraiser for you, no thanks. We'll do your petition for you, no thanks. We don't have no part of you. We don't want no part of you. So we use it as a strategy. We don't even believe that we can vote our way to freedom.
That's right.
We got to do stuff outside. So as a strategy. So one of the things Operation Power is now doing, you know, we vote for candidates or support candidates that might be a little bit progressive or whatever. We don't even do that anymore. We're at the point where we're sick of that. So if you ain't a radical, if you ain't revolutionary, don't knock on our door. No, I understand that, but see, when we do that, after we get 1 million conscious people that are registered, then we got to get 1 million Black radical revolutionaries out of that 1 million conscious people. Because see, I don't know what conscious means, because that has to be defined. You know, it's a lot of good stuff happening. I'm not against it at all. I saw them online, and it seems like a positive thing. But I'm 66 years old now. Not that I'm old, but I'm at a point where I don't want to hear no nonsense. I don't want to hear no conscious tricks. I don't want to hear nobody talking like us and not feeling us. It's time for us, because our people are dying, living in crises, living in emergency, to either be real or get out of our way.
No, man, it's real, man. So let me tell you why it's not nothing being solved, man. Let me tell you why. Because they are constantly getting rich off of us dying every day. And that's really why it's on us to put an end to it. That's why we're here today, is to make a sign and say it's time for revolution, man. It's time for change, man. Because we're tired of kids dying, getting molested. We're just tired of women being snatched every day. We're here to protect everybody, protect our Black race, man. We gotta bring our community back. That's to start with here, man. Black community control the police, man. That's why we got that sign up here. That's why I'm here. That's why they beg me to come here. I'm here, man. From all the way to Philly, man. It's time for change, man. Because they gonna continue. They not gonna stop until we put it into it. We gotta put it in. Nobody gonna come back down and save us. We gotta save our community and put it into it. Stop letting them get rich off us. More we sit down and just let it ride out, they're gonna continue to do it. We got to fight to it. Fight back. We have to do it. Have no choice. Because it's for our children's future, for the next generation, man. That's why I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Yaya and Yah for bringing me here, man. It's about revolution, man. We need Black power. We gotta bring it back.
Yes, I don't really have a question. What I want to do is I want to thank the organizers of the session, and I want to thank the brothers that articulated the whole political process. For years, we've been confused in our community as to if politics matters. I think the brother Charles, you're a perfect example, and I wish your example would be spread all over the planet with African people, because you have demonstrated by your actions and your behavior that we can succeed. You know, and I thank you, and you as well, brother, for outlining this whole proportional thing. So I think y'all did an excellent job in terms of articulating and bringing it to the community. Power, we're going to
That's black power.
Uhuru, I just wanted to know about the 19-point platform and how does that keep our election hopes or our participation in the elections pure, you know, as far as the revolutionary trajectory in which we wish to go. I don't know who would be best to answer that, but the 19-point platform of the BIBC.
Well, I just wanted to say our organization, Operation Power, has adopted that platform. So we're solidly behind it. The bill on reparations is a part of that platform. We're trying to fashion something to get some language for community control of the police. You know, how does that happen? You know, do we do an independent something? Do we do something in the system? You know, there's some things on it, and I'm going to talk to you about that more. How do we use any part of the electoral process to do that? But everything in there, single payer health care, you name it. You know, we have a bill in New York State that actually passed the New York State Senate Assembly on single payer. We just can't, we got it out of the Assembly, we just can't get it through the Senate. But single payer, you know, so-called Obamacare was bad and Trump care is worse. So neither one of those health care plans are good. It keeps healthcare in the private insurance companies, not with the public sector where healthcare should be free. When I went to Cuba, it was free. When in Zimbabwe, it is free. And Venezuela is free. There's countries all over the world that are worse off than America, but have free education and free healthcare. So we're 100% for the 19-point plan.
We are also staying shoulder to shoulder with the 19 points. In fact, on our publication, which is a quarterly publication, on our last issue, we had a full page on the 19 points. And in fact, we had reached out to a couple of statewide candidates that did endorse it, although they were on the Green Party, but we are pushing the 19 points.
Before you answer, just to answer Tiffany's question directly, the question was, you know, how does the 19-point platform make sure that the politicians who run, who come out of the African community, stay accountable to the African community? And everybody does have a copy of this in their registration packet. I'm just going to read off the titles, not so much the sub-head. But for example, a point like point number 1, which is Black women, that says that, you know, we have a commitment to facilitate the elevation of African women to full equal partnership in our struggle to create a new world of freedom and socialism, democracy, etc. You know, any organization that is about the liberation of African people should also be equally as about the liberation of African women in particular. You know, point number two, the Black family. Black can be control of the police, which is point number 3 that Diop spoke about. Bring all political prisoners. All of these presentations that we will see over this weekend are directly tied to this national political Black agenda for self-determination. So, you know, I urge everybody when you go home to really study this document, reparations, self-defense. If you have a Black politician who says they're for the people, but, you know, they don't understand the need for economic development to the Black community and reparations to the Black community, then they're not for the people, they're for their own self. You know, so having an understanding of what this is and seeing that, you know, the problems here with the solutions provided affect us wherever we are, whether in Miami, St. Pete, St. Louis, Chicago, Philly. Gentrification is everywhere. You know, Africans not having health care is everywhere. Us having issues in school is everywhere. So that is how we make sure that we stay accountable.
And I just wanted to just piggyback off of that real quickly. Basically, you know, as people who vote, we take that 19-point platform and we say to these politicians, where do you stand on these issues? And if they don't stand where we want them, if they're not for these issues, if they're not going to support us, they don't get our vote. And it's simple. I'm gonna tell you something. You don't get our vote. That's simple.
Yes, I really have a comment. First, I would like to thank Mr.
power that everyone that has worked with them to put this together.
Stand up, Pam.
And also, I would like to thank all the parties that have found the guests here to Chicago. And we would like to say a very special thanks to Mr. Charles Barron, or is that Attorney Charles Barron, for everything that you've done in the Black community, everything that you've done in New York. I would just like to make this comment and no responses. No responses needed. All of us in this room know there's a lot of people that reside in New York, in the city of New York, and the surrounding areas. And as far as the other gentleman that was running for the office that represents the Democrat Party, Jeffries, what I don't understand is the Black people that live in New York or in the surrounding areas, how come they did not support Mr. Barron and the things that he was doing for the Black community? Now, we mentioned some names, and have to respond. Please do not respond this thing. We have Al Sharpton out of New York. We have Al Sharpton out of New York. We have people like Beyonce, Jay-Z, Diddy, Alicia Keys, Rich Beats, Nas, quite a few of them. Where are they when it comes to the least of these? I'm not a registered Democrat nor a Republican. I support people, not a party. If my candidate don't win in the primary, you're on your own individual. And he's right. As far as the southern states, we should have had a Black governor by now. There's many reasons why we don't. But usually in the end, when it comes to the general, 90 to 95% of our people support the Democrat Party. We should be asking why. We should be asking why. But I'm sure once again, and I'm gonna make some people mad, but Pam Howard know where I stand on this issue pretty much. I'm sure over half of this room supported Barack Obama. Okay, thank you. But what I want to say at the end of the day, our community is in trouble. Black men is in trouble. The employment is very high across the board, not just Chicago, not just Detroit. We just had a brother just lost the election in Detroit, and he comes back and says, I believe his father was he was in there, I believe in the 70s, in the city of Detroit. And after he lost the election, day before yesterday, he said, I cannot believe in this city of Detroit, where it's like 70, maybe 80% Black, I may be off of the percentage, that this city elected a white man. Yes, if you did not bring anything for the brothers and sisters to come out to support you, because you played it safe. A brother that's 35 years old with an X on his back and have served time, why would he come out and vote for you, an educated Black man, and you can employ yourself? Thank you.
My sister, thank you so much. I'm just gonna have to remind people of the time. We're going to take everyone right after this brother right here with the hat on, and then we're going to go on with the rest of the program. And we want to start the other section of the program.
Yes, just like to thank everybody on the panel and for the excellent work and everything. I just wanted to mention that my name is Yao. I'm from Philadelphia, part of the African of the Black is Back Coalition, Black Community Control Police Working Group, and going back to the 19th point, we in Philadelphia, the Black is Back Black Community Control Police went to City Hall, and we organized and went to City Hall and tried to present the Black Community Control resolution to City Council, and really they was like they didn't have anything for it. They tap danced and played games like they were going to meet around. We wanted them to adopt that as a solution, as adopt the resolution, and we think that all the major cities are Africans that need to go and take that resolution and force those people that's supposed to be representing that. Well, they were Democrats in here, so we were told that they didn't even like it. They were forced to string us along They said they had to rewrite the language so that they can understand it, which we know was a lie. They challenged it. They really was shocked when Diop read the solution. They cut him down to 3 minutes with this. But Diop forced them to listen to the whole resolution, and we would force them to adopt the solution. I mean, we knew they weren't going to do it. They were very resistant to it. They're still resistant to it, and they're afraid of it. So we're not finished with it. We had to back up, drop back, and punt, and get the right field position. But we have to so that they don't have anything for it. They were totally shocked. We got print up in the Tribune newspaper. It read about 7 pages saying that we had disrupted city council, which we did. We intentionally wanted to disrupt them. And I think moving forward, we're going to. I agree with you. That's what we're going to have to do.
We're going to hear these 2 more questions, and then
We are going to have the discussion of the police community control up in the next, right? Okay. Okay, just want to get clarification. 2 questions. First of all, Brother Charles, in terms of the concept of community control of the police, will you be here for the next portion to discuss the referendum that you are working on in New York City with regard to grand jury control? Are you going to be available for that discussion?
I'll be around. My flight leaves at 8, so I'll be there at 6.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
That was question, the first question. And I want to acknowledge Charles Barron, and I was assistant principal. He came in with a leadership program. And throughout our community, he is an educator first and a politician second.
not a politician.
Exactly, excuse me, yes. And I just want to emphasize that to someone here who was speaking, the sister who just came before me. We have to be able to break it down. Adjunct to College of New Rochelle, he came to the College of New Rochelle and he really broke down for my students what political science really is. And without that, you're going to get, some of this that you're talking about, this pushback, and that's what you just spoke. And finally, with regard to education, if you're talking reparations, and it's not within the context of institutions, capitalist institutions, the same people who gave it to us are going to get it back in 2 seconds, because the corrupt people are going to steal your money. So the next question is for Brother Glen forward. I'm sorry if I missed it, but when you were discussing the sending in of the troops to protect the integration cycle that we've been through in this country, did you get a chance to discuss the conflict, the international conflict that was going on? I would have called it a crisis of capitalism because there were rebellions all over the world against America, and they needed to squash or chill out the Black revolt here. That's my interpretation. I don't know if you had a chance to say that, but if you did, could you just elaborate a little bit?
Well, that's what I did mention briefly.
Yes.
That this was the height of the Cold War. That this was also the period of decolonization. It was right after the Bandung Conference when countries that had previously decolonized were coming together to form the non-aligned movement. The Soviet Union was impressing lots of decolonizing countries. And so it was very embarrassing to the United States when its invention, television, was showing all these crowds, these mobs of white people, especially women, attempting to lynch young Black children. That is what set this segregationist President Eisenhower off. That's what forced him to make a show to the world, not to Black people in Arkansas, not to us, but to show the world that the United States didn't tolerate lynch mob rule. And that's, but however, he and the Republican Party did earn lots of goodwill from Black America for doing that which they never would have done for us. They did it for world opinion.
Okay, so
the second half of the question is, do you think we're in a political cycle right now, vis-a-vis the power of China and the power of this Arab immigrant coming through to do the same thing again? Do you think we have a
So I want to let the other brother come up and ask his question, and then we can answer like that.
Okay, thank you for allowing me this time. I should tell, well, I'm almost embarrassed now to stand here, but as a resident of Chicago, I'd like to welcome you to the city of Chicago. You talk about police accountability. This gentleman over here, Frank, would you stand for just a moment? This gentleman here is leading the call for police accountability here in the city of Chicago. I'm humbled that he's even here. A lot of our activists aren't here because today is our Bud Billiken parade, back to school, and that is basically highlighted citywide for trying to encourage our young people to go back to school. So, you know, for that reason. But I am glad that Frank with CPAC, the accountability program in the city, to hold, and even on Friday, the gentleman that had made mention of the LaQuan McDonald case. On Friday, Frank took a delegation of almost 50 advocates up into the courthouse here and held that officer, Jason Van Dyke. And Jason Van Dyke actually lost a ruling that would have allowed him to hide testimony that he had given on that night. So that's you know, one of the accomplishments that Chicago has. And I thank you all for holding this here in our city.
Yeah. We're going to get ready to go to our next segment. He was the last, but we're going to have more questions and answers afterwards. So you're going to make sure to get a first in line afterwards.
Politician is a low life.
Right.
Yes.
Uhuru, no disagreement with anybody here. So the next part of the program, we are going to have this presentation by Brother Diop Ballot. This is pertaining to the referendum initiative for Black community control of the police. It will be a panel discussion with Brother Diop Ballot with the Black community control of the police care. Frank Chapman with the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. So.
Whoa. I think this is a really important process and discussion. There can always be more people here, but I think that the forces who are here represent very large sectors of our communities throughout various parts of the country. And I'm confident that this discussion is going to result in some really important struggles to come, particularly around the question of the police. We know that the theme of this entire conference is the ballot and the bullet, elections, world peace in the era of Trump, recognizing that we should use every means of struggle available to us to achieve the fundamental goal of self-determination. And when we say self-determination, we're not just talking about self-determination for a small part of our community, meaning they can do what they want, but we're talking about the ability for the entire Black community to be self-determined and in control collectively of our own freedom, our own resources, our own future. I'm joined during this panel by Brother Frank, who has been on the front lines, that was just stated earlier, on the struggle for police accountability in the city of Chicago. And he's going to be introducing some really important tactics that his organization has employed and is currently employing to advance the struggle for what they refer to as community control and community police accountability. So, but one thing that we want to be clear is that when we talk about the ballot, we, as Brother Barron stated earlier, we know that we're not going to win self-determination or freedom as a consequence of a vote. Because the fact is that we didn't vote to be in the situation in the first place. We know that it was white people with guns, whips, chains, and other weapons that imposed their will on black people in Africa, ripped us from our homeland, took us on a boat, took us here, and other parts of the so-called Western Hemisphere, forced us to work with the whip, the gun, with coercion and violence, right? And the reality is, even to this day, the masses of African people, those of us who are still over at home and throughout this world, don't even have access to an electoral process to determine what's going to happen with our lives and our resources, you know? So we know we don't live in a vacuum. We don't struggle in a vacuum, and we are anti-imperialists, meaning that we are not only opposed to what the police do to black people in Philly or Chicago or anywhere else in this country, but we are opposed to what the U.S. government and the imperialist state is doing to oppress people all over the world. And we are in the belly of the beast. And therefore, our ability to wage a successful struggle for black community control of police and self-determination here will affect the ability of U.S. imperialism to attack our people and oppress people anywhere around the planet. So that's important to say as we open it up. So we don't have a lot of time either, and I want to be real disciplined and respectful of the program. I'm glad we caught up a little bit, and I'm going to be as fast as possible. And Brother Frank is going to come up behind me and talk a little bit as well. And we're going to have some questions and answers. But we want to come out of this thing winning unity around some real practical questions on what we can do to advance the struggle. So the ballot in the front, waging an electoral campaign for black community control of the police. So first of all, as we stated before, the goals of the Black Community Control of the Police campaign are: one, we want the withdrawal of the colonial police force from the black community. We understand that the police don't solve any problems for black people, but the police, as well as the entire colonial state, exists in this society, particularly to keep African people separated from our freedom and our resources. So Brother Charles Barron talked about in East New York, 30% unemployment, 30% poverty, you know, a median income of $30,000 or so for a household of 4 people. And in a city like New York, how the hell can you survive under those conditions? And therefore, in those objective circumstances, African people are constantly in a struggle just to survive. And in fact, what we do to survive necessarily is determined by our oppressor as crime, much of the time. And the police are put in our community as a force to keep us from getting organized, to take back the resources that are stolen from us. And of course, such occupation is justified in the name of fighting crime. But we want the police out of our community, and those same resources need to go towards economic development for our community. Also, number 2, we want the right to a Black Community Control of Police Commission comprised of democratically elected representatives from each block and neighborhood from within the district and city. 3, the goal is the power to hire, fire, train, and discipline police forces approved by that Black Community Control of Police Commission. 4, we want the right to armed self-defense of the oppressed Black community. Now, those are the goals. This is what we want to achieve in the final analysis through this campaign. In terms of objectives, meaning how we're going to achieve these goals, we have identified specific objectives or ways of struggle. And much of these objectives came out of the National Conference on Black Community Control of Police that happened in Ferguson, Missouri in April of 2015. The number 1 objective is to wage a city council resolution campaign. As Comrade Yah stated, in every city where we have the ability, we want to go to these city council meetings and present to them this resolution, which you'll find in your packets, for Black Community Control of the Police, saying that this is the will of the people. So we'll talk more about that as well. At the same time, we want to wage the city council resolution struggle. We also want to adopt the resolution to carry out what is known as a referendum campaign. I was expecting for Brother Khalid to speak something about initiatives and referendums, but it's important to understand that a referendum essentially is a law that the people can actually put on the ballot, vote for, and if you get enough votes, then it actually becomes the law. So in certain states in this country, you can actually wage that type of campaign. From our research, we found that Missouri, Illinois, Minneapolis, and Texas, and California, not Illinois, but California, those 4 states we know for certain you can actually wage referendum campaigns around the question of the police. So that's important to know as well. In terms of the second objective, legal defense and political mobilization. Now, we don't just struggle on the electoral front, but every single step of the way, even as we are struggling for this referendum or resolution to be passed by City Council, we stay on the ground. And this is the second thing that came out of the conference in Ferguson, when we say legal defense and political mobilization. Also in your package, you'll find a newsletter as well as the Know Your Rights card, which we are responsible for distributing amongst the people on a regular basis. And out of that, we also want to encourage cop watches and other process programs that encourage the people to confront the police around when they approach and harass and detain the people in the community. The third objective is the petition and recruitment process. You'll also find in your package a petition, and this is valuable for the resolution campaign as well, because the petition, getting signatures, is a concrete representation of the support that we have from the people for this particular demand and resolution. And at the same time, the petition serves as a context sheet for which we can follow up with people. If you sign a petition, there's a likelihood that you may be interested in joining the movement and the coalition. Also, the objective of the campaign is to expand, grow, and expand this working group. Right now, the center of our activity as a working group is in Philadelphia. However, we need to be in every city carrying out this work. And therefore, there's going to be a call to join later on in this presentation. Now, in terms of the referendum and resolution campaign objectives, so we're going to talk about this as well through Brother Frank particularly, but we want to be able to draft a Black community controlled police policy based on the principles of the call to arms that was written by Chairman Omali. And in your package, you'll find that document, but I just want to read what it says real quick, because it's important that we understand, because we redefine what the police should be in the what Black community control of the police should be, that is. So it states, Black community control of the police is a demand that, although reform initiates a struggle to deconstruct the colonial state presence in our community, Black community control of the police is a democratic demand, and that it places control of the police directly in the hands of those most affected by police behavior. Moreover, there is no legitimate reason to be offered by the ruling class or state for why the people should not have control of the gun-wielding forces in our community. This means that the power to hire, fire, discipline, fund, and train police would be in the hands of African people. We can create community councils that would have this responsibility. This means that the police will cease to be an invading force that comes to the African community looking for trouble, but would have to live in the community and share in solving all the contradictions of the community, including poverty, joblessness, poor housing, poor and poisonous education, poor or no health care, etc. This means that the role of the police would have to change. Their uniforms would also change from the military stormtrooper outfits and gear that are designed to instill fear and function to remind the people that we are under occupation. That's from a document called Get Focused by Black and Black Chairman Omali Yeshitela, published January 4, 2015. That's an important document because that informs our understanding of what Black community control of the police should look like, to solve the problems of the people as opposed to the problems of capitalism and robbing the Black community blind, which is what the police currently do. So in terms of referendum and resolution goals, We want to expose white capitalist ruling class dictatorship, build revolutionary mass movement for black self-determination, and win broad support for the revolutionary demands of the 19-point platform for black community, black political self-determination. In terms of the referendum and resolution objectives, we have to draft a referendum in the places where it's possible to wage a referendum campaign. We're gonna have more discussion about this in Q&A, but we have to write up the referendum using language, terminology, and structure that's consistent with the local government law and policy. And Brother Frank is gonna help us out with that. Also, the key principles of this referendum, based on that document from the chairman I just read, the law that we write must speak to the question of the power to hire, fire, and train and set training standards of police forces in the black community. The power to discipline, that would include subpoena power, and the power to establish democratically elected black community controlled police commission, meaning that the people from your block, your neighborhood, your quote unquote district, etc., are the ones that you select as a community to sit on and over the police force and be the police force in the community. And that based on what we said, we training them, we set the training standards, meaning what they do, etc. This is an independent apparatus that protects and defends the deepest interests of the black community. So, and this is what the referendum that we're going to write is going to say, concretely. We're going to put it on the ballot in areas where we can. Now, here's the city council resolution for ballot referendum wage electoral campaign to have policy voted on by the citizens of city, district, etc., within which policy will be implemented. Like I said, the states where this can happen in terms of referendum is Texas, Missouri, California, Illinois. Now, just real quick, I know we're slow on time, but this is important. I gave, there's a part of your package, and if you can pull it out, please. There's 3 pages that's inside of the newsletter that's called Fist Up, Fight Back. So if you look inside the package, you'll see a newsletter that says Fist Up, Fight Back, and inside it is 3 pages. And I just want to real quickly look at a couple of the pages that's in there. Because historically, this referendum process has been used by the white people, by the white ruling class and the general white population, which is one of the reasons, and we'll talk about, why we don't say community control of the police, we say black community control of the police. And there's a specific reason why. Because this is a campaign, this is a referendum that speaks to the historic attack on the black population of inside this country by the police and via the white population that has acted like the police and has acted in unity with the white ruling class. So I know that's time, but there's been referendums passed in the last couple years, in fact. And you'll see one of the documents that's in the packet I just told you. It's called Ballot Initiative, used as a counterinsurgent weapon against the people's resistance. So, for example, in Los Angeles, California, in May of this year, this past May, a civilian review of police disciplinary matters, Measure C. This is an actual referendum that just got voted on, y'all, and check this out. This referendum that people voted on, it says a police disciplinary hearing board selection charter amendment, Measure C, was on the ballot for Los Angeles voters in Los Angeles County, California, May 16, 2017, and it was approved. And a yes vote, meaning what was approved was a vote in favor of adopting a charter amendment to allow police officers accused of misconduct to choose between appearing before a board of rights composed of A, 2 police officers and a civilian, or B, 3 civilians. So if you're a pig out here in the ghetto and you are known for violating people's rights, raping women or planting drugs on people, etc., whatever, and okay, somebody calls you out on it. So through this law now, that pig has the choice to either appear before a board comprised of 3 people, 2 which are going to be police themselves, and the other one is a quote-unquote civilian. Or they can choose to appear before three civilians. If you appear, which one are you going to choose? You know, A, of course, you're going to choose to go before the body, which the majority of which is made up of the cats that's doing the same thing you're doing. And this was an actual referendum that received 54.81% of the vote. You know, there's another one, Oakland, California, Civilian Police Commission, measure double L. A yes vote was a vote in favor of creating a police commission run by civilian commissioners to oversee the Oakland Police Department as well as the Community Police Review Agency to investigate complaints of police misconduct. And that received 83.19% of the votes, which is, in a way, you can say that's positive. But the reason why I put this among the examples of counterinsurgency is because it's not enough to have a civilian review board that simply investigates. Because even if they find that, okay, they investigated the facts of the case and they, okay, here you go, police department, here's what we found out. But at the end of the day, it's the DA, it's the police department itself, etc. It's the state that determines where to go from there. But this is a resolution, a referendum. But the point is that we, the revolution, the movement, has to not only occupy the space of elected officials running, but we also have to occupy the space in which referendums, policy, etc., is voted on as well. We should not allow for white power, the white left, etc., to determine how we define public policy reform, etc. And the city of Ferguson, mandatory body cameras. I'm not even going to go through all this. But this week in 2016 in Ferguson, petitioners needed about $1,300 signatures. This didn't even make it, it lost, but it was for body cameras. And y'all know our politics. We say, in fact, our founding document says body cameras ain't enough, you know, because again, we saw what happened with Eric Garner. That was all on video, but he still got on. Again, it's a question of power. So the referendum that we are introducing must, with no compromise, raise up the question of power to hire, fire, train, subpoena, and also our own independent Black community controlled police commission. So what must be done? We want to immediately establish a task force, establish a timeline, a plan of action to raise this campaign. We need to answer critical questions. I did not do all of the research, but that's why we need to assemble a task force made up of forces in this audience, as well as those who are watching, because we need to be able to say concretely how we're moving out in all the cities where people sign up. And those questions include, when is the next election? How many signatures and votes are needed? What will the language of the referendum be? How will the Black community controlled police be established? These are questions that this task force and our working group needs to be able to answer. And what must be done? We must immediately begin building a Black community controlled police working group and Black organizing units as the basis for the Black community controlled police commission. So in those newsletters, put stuff like that on the back of it, you find a membership form. If you want to be a part of this, sign it, fill it out, sign it, give it back to me, Comrade Rashid or Yah, Comrade Nanny, and we'll make sure to get back in touch with you. So, you know, we talk, and I'm bringing out of time, we're going to get into the community controlled police versus Black community controlled police, because these are important political, but ideological questions, but it's not abstract, because they have immediate implications in terms of the outcome of everything that we're trying to do. But we'll talk more about that. I'm taking way too much time. I'm subcritical. Comrade Frank, please take it away.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, I want to thank Black for having me, inviting me to this meeting. I want to unite the funerals over the objectives and terms of Black community. We have no difference. There are some differences in tactics, but I didn't really come here to discuss that. I came here to discuss what we are actually doing in Chicago and the Black.
will give the concrete analogy. You live out of the fan too in your room. First of all, I want to speak to something that Brother Barron spoke about a few minutes ago, talking about time for revolution. It's been time for revolution. It's time for revolution now with phones 74 years. The time now is to make us. That's right. We will make this time to live. So we have to do this in detail, not just in general. And making a revolution is a process. It happened all at once, it happened when that. So the way I look at reform is like this. Either it is advancing the revolution or it's not. One way or the other. If it's not about changing the power relationship between us and the powers that be, it's not worth fighting for. What we're fighting for is a change in power relationship. And we talk about community control of the police and black community control of the police. We're talking about a change in the power relationship between our people who are repressed and dominated by the police as if they were an occupying army. They are not. They are not. And so we have to deal with it. Now, you got some documents that I brought here with me. This is a piece of legislation for an all-elected, all-civilian police accountability council. This is not just in our imagination. This is in the Public Safety Committee of the City Council, and it's there because we fought to put it there. It didn't get there because somebody in the City Council woke up one day and said, oh, let me put that in. It's there because we put thousands of people in the streets protesting and put it in. And it's also there because we did a level of grassroots organizing that hasn't been done in this country for a long time. We're organizing people door by door, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, precinct by precinct, political district, ward by ward, political district by political district. Okay? And we have 50,000 supporters now. And when I say we have 50,000 supporters, I'm not talking about people who signed the petition. I'm talking about people that we talk to. People whose doors we knock. People that we talk to and who we got their support there with. We have a data bank with actual names and phone numbers and addresses of those people. We know who's registered to vote and we know who's not. We know that in what wards where we have more people supporting CPAC than that alderman got to vote for him in the last election. We know that. So when we go and talk to them, we're not going with an empty hand. We're not going begging. We're not going saying, would you please help us out and give us this legislation? We're going demanding. We're demanding. And we're saying to them that if we don't get what we want, then we're going to shut you down. You will not get back into the city council. Now, these are not idle threats. We have, in that particular ward, gotten more people to support us than we had in the last election. So the next election year is going to be a moment of truth for us. We're going to be able to see how it affects our muscles. In other words, there are people who are not supposed to go back into the city council. And it's our responsibility to see to that they don't go back. And we got people who are running, supporting CPAC. If they don't support CPAC, we say, don't vote for them. Don't vote for them. Because when the city council had a hearing on this, they didn't have a hearing on this bill, they had a hearing on the Bush bill that the mayor had ain't called cop. But the people
You know of any other? This is the only one. So they admit that they did the target. Right. Why would you pass the reparations bill if you don't admit it? You know? The mayor got up and said the more crocodile tears you said said he apologized to the family. But we still got 118 people locked up that they knew they tortured. Yep. So we're saying these people need to be set free. They need to be set free. There needs to be no further discussion about this. So we're calling upon our people to support this demand directed at Governor Barron, supporting all victims of police torture and free them now. Somebody said, well, don't ask that governor for nothing because he's a low down dirty guy. He ain't gonna give you nothing. You don't understand political stuff. That's not what this is about. You know, it's not about what kind of a guy he is. It's about what kind of movement you can do to make this shit happen. You know, that's what it's about. You know. Politics is about power. It's about power. If you engage in the political struggle, then you are engaged in the struggle for power. If you are a revolutionary, then you engage in the struggle to overthrow the powers that be, because those are the powers that are holding us down. You see? So now, but that's a process. And so every step along the way, we have to educate people that we're trying to change power relationships here. We're trying to change power relationships. You know, we want to empower us and depower them. You know, that's what we're trying. Now, if we're not moving in that direction, then we're moving in the wrong direction. That's my opinion. And then just a few things. I get time up for the lady. How many minutes I got? 10? But I already spoke that long. Okay, good. The uniqueness of Chicago. I'm in favor of the initiative. In fact, I use that with everything that's proposed in terms of, you know, engaging in political stuff. You know, but the best thing to do about that is to do it. You know? And not just have a proposal. But now, there's some things going on here in Chicago. We are calling upon the whole nation to support us in it. Everybody. Because if we win here, we all win. If we lose here, we all lose. We are in a good position. In all of the cities in the United States, I would assess that politically, we're in the best position to drive this nail to the wall. We're in the best position because what happened here? The Quan McDonald case happened. The Quan McDonald case, in one fell stroke, exposed these rascals for what they really are. And exposed them for what they really are. It showed that we have a corrupt to the core, racist police department, and that is backed up 100% by the mayor and by the city council. Right. That's what it showed. Because all of them was in on this. Yeah. They all knew about that video. They suppressed it for 400 days. They were all in on it. The city council voted for the family to be given $5 million. But then they told them, shh, don't say nothing. You can't demand the video. Don't say nothing. And they put the video on ice. We had to go to court and fight them to get that video released because they knew that it was incriminating evidence. So if you take incriminating evidence in a murder case, the first-degree murder case, and you conceal that evidence, and you sat on it for 400 days, isn't that complicity? That's complicity in a murder. So the mayor is guilty of complicity, and so is the city council. They only have one person indicted for murder, and that's Jason Van Dyke. And it took them forever to go and get them cops that lied about what they saw that day. You know, it took them forever. So now, these people are exposed. The emperor is naked. Yeah. And so we have an opportunity in this town to drive that nail to the wall. That's why when they had the hearings on police accountability, the overwhelming majority of people in them hearings supported our argument. But they wouldn't have a hearing on it. They wouldn't have a hearing on it. Okay, that's one unique piece. The other one is what I've been talking about, the torture case. don't understand why we've never had enough riots in Chicago. You know, I do understand the rhetorical question.
Should have had.
We never had enough riots because we never organized them. We never organized them. This is the city that murdered Fred Hampton. This is the city that has one of the most repressive police forces that's very political. Very political. They've had red squads, you know, they've been 100% of the going jailboat program against the Panther Party. They have been about the business of destroying movements and keeping movements. So I said, we haven't had enough riots here. Well, do we have a movement here? Do we have a movement for housing? Do we have a movement around unemployment? Do we have a movement around some of the things Brother Barron was talking about? Healthcare? Do we have a movement around those things? No, we do not. And the reason why we don't have a movement is because what we got first and foremost is political repression spearheaded by the Chicago Police Department. And political repression works, particularly if you don't fight back on it. You don't fight back. That makes us unique too. We have an opportunity here to turn that tide around. And if you turn it around for Chicago, you turn it around for the nation. Because the political repression ain't just going on just here. It's going on everywhere. It's going on everywhere. You know, it's going on everywhere. So, based on that uniqueness, we are calling upon all of our comrades, and I consider you our comrades, all of our comrades throughout the length and breadth of this country to join us in Chicago in making this fight. We called the demonstration yesterday around this big Jason Van Dyke. Now, we had 100 or so people down there. We packed the courtroom, but we should have had 5,000 down there. You know how many people it is in Chicago? I mean, how many black people it is there? There's a lot of black people there. Yeah. And we only got like 100 people down there. Yeah. So see, we got work to do. Because we got to stir people up and make them see that we're not going to give nothing if we don't fight for it. You may not get all you fight for, but you have to fight for all you get. You know. That's ridiculous. So now, based on that, I think I made those points already. I'm a little tired, y'all. But based on that, let me just say how many more minutes I got to do. 2 minutes, okay. Based on that, let me just say this, is that we want to work with all the progressive forces. I believe black people can lead anybody. So we are a black-led coalition. We have brown people in our coalition, we have white people in our coalition, we have Native American, indigenous people in our coalition, but we lead it. We are leading. And we can do that. You know, we can do that. The Underground Railroad had more than black people in it, but they led it. Harry Tubman led it, no doubt about it. He was a general. He led that, you know. So now, we can lead things. The reason why we use community control of the police is because we are uniting all the folks that we can unite, like the Black Panther Party was doing before they killed Fred Hampton. We are uniting all those people that we can possibly unite to fight against this system. Everybody that has a stake in fighting against it, we want them to be organized. Our job is to organize black people, to make sure that they are in this fight and that they take the lead in this fight. Because we're taking the lead in being oppressed. You know, we need that. So we need to take the lead in this fight. And we need to let our enemies know that we know who they are. That they don't necessarily have to have a white face. Some of them are in our community. Most of them are in our community. The police chief in this city right now is named Eddie Johnson, and he's black. He's black. So we need to get clear about what we're doing here. You know, I'm all in favor of black community control of the police, but I'm also all in favor of organizing the broadest, deepest possible movement that we can organize to Because we were going up against the ruling class that rules based on disunity. That's what they rule on. Based on disunity among us, and based on disunity among oppressed people. Anti-imperialism, that calls for solidarity. That calls for solidarity. There are Palestinians in our coalition. Yeah. There are Filipinos in our coalition. You see? And they're having their own fight. The Filipinos are. They're having their own revolution. But they have joined our coalition here with our demand for community control of police. You know, they brought the international legal struggle here in October of last year, and we had a huge demonstration downtown with our Filipinos out there. Yeah. So that's it.
Yes, I'm going to get this more. So next we do have a Q&A, which people are going to line up at the microphone again. I do want to say, please, to be fair to not only the people with their responses, but to be fair to other people who may have questions. To keep your questions short, you go, you state your question, you ask your question, and then that's it. If you have a comment, you state your comment in a minute. The timekeeper will time you to a minute. And we only have 10 minutes to do this process.
We got a little bit, we gotta be honest about like questions. We
have to end at 4.
No, we can be honest about questions.
We have to end at 4.
The water, we have water coming.
Well, I just want to say that the goal of this panel is to walk away with a concrete resolution. But Frank called on everybody to join in the struggle that's happening right now in Chicago for police accountability question. We as the Black and Fat Coalition and Black Community for Police, we want to work out of here winning as much unity as possible around the question of voting, the referendum campaign around Black Community for Police question. So please go, if you can, join, fill out the membership form in the back if you're interested in joining, carrying out the objectives that we laid out in the strategy.
First question?
Yes, as you previously alluded to, would it not be better to properly name the Army of Occupation, known as the police, in all of our conversations to better enable us to understand the problem of the Army of Occupation, known as the police, and the solution? Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we've been talking on occupation for the last 40 years.
Yes.
Yes, okay, no problem.
In our literature, everybody can speak. Army of Occupation.
Absolutely.
Is the police.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, I just want to compliment both of you for all the work that you're doing. To my brother, you made mention about 9, all the persons are in support of it. How many do you need to be able to pass?
I need another 20.
Another 20. That's all this was.
We got a lot of work. We need another 20. We can build in the land.
What's happening, brother? I want to ask a specific question, because I'm from Chicago. Fifth Ward, talking about all. I want to know where my alderman is.
From this?
Yeah, Alderman Harrison.
I know you're talking about that. I know. She's in the marriage party. I mean, just straight up. When we were fighting with them, the CPAC, when we were having the hearings and whatnot, she came. In fact, they came to our office to have a meeting with us. Okay. And we refused to have a meeting with them in our office. We told them we would meet with them for the meeting. You know, because whatever they had to say to us, they need to say to the people. Because they operate in 2 ways. You know, They say one thing to you in private, and then they get public, they talk about something different. You know, they switch horses. Because in private, they had already told us several times that they would support CPAC. Well, I want you to say that in public. So let's talk about it at the hearing. When we got to the hearing and she was sitting on the panel, she came out in support of the man's court.
I'd just like to say, in following up on what you said about the uniqueness of Chicago, Jason Van Dyke, okay, white cop, shot this young black brother 16 times in Chicago, all right, in the hometown of the sitting black president. Yeah. At the time, we had blacks in control of the federal government. You had Holder as the Attorney General. You had Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General. And under their administration, they did not charge one person, okay, with a federal hate crime. Premier Rice, Sandra Glen, yeah, any of those people, they refused to charge. So I just want to put that on the record.
We agree with that. Let me just say something on that. Not really a response, but I agree. We did an open letter to Obama during that period. And basically what we said to him is that you're not using any of your authority as president to do anything about this situation. And then the next thing he said to him is, you're not expecting me to. You're not expecting me to. The people have got to make this not them politicians.
Where's Chicago at with the contract negotiations and the police contract negotiations? And what success have you had responding to Blue Lives Matter? That's right.
Well, we've had some forums on the police contract negotiations, and we've done a lot of education around it. But the police contract negotiations, here's what they mean to us. They don't mean nothing to us. Unless we have power. Now, if we get CPAC passed, then the police contract negotiations, then we got a voice. Then we can say what we want. The police get $1.2 billion annually to operate. That's the operation budget. That's 40% of the city's operation budget, while schools are being closed down and whatnot. You know, so we've agitated around this like that, you know, talking about this proportionality and whatnot. But agitation is one thing, stopping it is another. In order to stop it, we need CPAC. We need community control of police. We need to be the ones that they're negotiating the contract with, not that old lackey city council. And that's who they negotiate the contract with now, them, not us. So, you know, we're protesting like we should, but with the understanding that we don't have no power to do nothing about it. And so we are arguing that, hey, we need to get that power.
Uhuru. My name is Columbai, and I'm from St. Louis, Ferguson. And right now in St. Louis, I don't know if people know about the case of Anthony Smith and Zaki have been at court. I believe Zaki been there every single day. I think last week I missed a couple of days. But it was very, things that I know already. You know, you need Black community control over the courts, even how they look at police involved shootings. And what we learned, what we know in this case is over and over again, the system is corrupt and it don't work for us. Like when we talk about, you know, how the police operate in all every piece of the state. And in this case, Anthony Smith was murdered in 2011 in December by Jason Stocker, the police officer, that brought a gun that is not allowed to have on the street to work with him, where the dash cam shows him with gloves on with his gun, shows all these implications. AK-47. He brought the work with him with gloves on, and we see this. We hear with our own two ears him saying, "I'm going to kill this motherfucker, don't you know it?" Yeah. Several times, okay, in this case. And all the police that have testified said that they watched the dash cam, but it's not police policy for them to question police officers and police involved shooting. That's why he was allowed to go home. That's why he was allowed to do all these things. So when we talk about police, you know, I believe you said police boards and stuff, I really think that it has to be like Black community controlling the police, because Black people would say that police officers need to be interrogated the minute someone is murdered. You know, that's what the people would say. The people wouldn't say that, you know, oh, they get to go home with their families and they can just write some statement, you know, that they fellow police officers who could decide this. But the people should be deciding it. So, you know, I think that, I know that this seems extreme, but I think we live in an extreme time where Africans are murdered all the time, and just to sit back and ask for body cameras and ask for police review boards when we don't have no power, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. And I think that the young people and more people, the working class people, will get behind these things when they see real radical change, because they know that the body cameras ain't working. You know what I'm saying? They know this stuff don't work. So it's hard to get them to, you know, get people motion, get in motion around things that they like that's, you know, they ain't gonna do anything, because the police had a dash cam when he put dope in my pocket. The police had a dash cam when they beat me up and put me in their car. So I just really wanted to hear, and I know I took way more time than I should, and I apologize for not having any discipline. But I just wanted to say that, because the federal government, the state, Jennifer Joyce was the prosecuting attorney, the mayor, all of them, every single person, all the way up to Obama, knew about this. And they know about it every single time. It's a carbon copy that we see not only in St. Louis, but we see these implications everywhere in the world. So we already know that simply just having some neo-colonial puppets in office is not going to do anything for us. So we have to really be clear on what it is that we asking for, and what that looked like, in my opinion. Uhuru.
We all do. Legislation is good. All those issues that you just raised and all those issues that were raised before I spoke are addressed. You know, we are not demanding anything less than that we have an inalienable democratic right to say who polices our community and how our community is policed. We're not talking about no review board. We're not talking about no oversight. We're talking about control. We're talking about power. You know? And in order to have that power, we have to change the politics. You know, we have to change things politically. We have to change things politically. And that's what we are about to finish doing. That's why we're organizing block by block, you know, district by district, with our neighborhood, so that we will know what our power consists of. We will know what we can do with it. So we got to 50,000 support. That's why we're going to make some changes in the election when we come up. You know. We're not demanding a seat at the table. We're demanding get rid of that table. We want another table. Community control.
Just to say that Sister Betty Davis will be the last question that is asked. Bianca's going to answer something to that question that Khalid just mentioned, and then Sister Betty Davis, closing statements by East Davis, and then break down and get out.
First of all, I want to unite with President Khalid on the question that it got to be Black community control the police. And to say that is not an assault on the right or struggle of other oppressed people to say Palestinian control the police or Mexican control the police or control the police by any other oppressed people. But the reality is that it's Black people that's the primary target of police violence and aggression in this country, and it's been that way for the last 500 years. You know what I mean? I mean, the police was created as an instrument to keep Black people in slavery working for free, you know? And the police in the Southwest, you know, they were the ones that keep the Mexicans separated from their border. We unite with the struggle as we say in our platform, that Mexican people should be returned their land and they should have control over their own lives as well. But when we talk about the police question, especially in a city like Chicago, we got to say Black community control of the police. And I just want to say that because it's a really, why is it that, whenever you talk about Black people having power, it becomes a problem. All of a sudden, it got to be this big thing. I mean, Black Lives Matter, nobody had, Black Lives Matter, in fact, was evidence that a movement can be built that's centered around the Black question. However, when we say Black community control of the police, that's taking it further because Black Lives Matter is asking for our oppressor, via the Democratic Party and liberal imperialism, to essentially, be nice to us. Hands up, don't shoot, etc. What we're saying is that Black people need to have the power in our own hands. Black people need to have the power in our own hands, So we can't back down from that question. Again, that's not an assault on the struggle that other oppressed people are making for control of their lives and whatnot, but we have to be real clear. But again, and this is for everybody that's out there listening and watching because we want to build a movement. And part of our strategy right now, as Black is Black Coalition, we're talking about initiating this referendum and initiative campaign. So those who are interested in building a movement that would instill the power in the Black neighborhoods to control, fire, hire, train, discipline, etc. The police in our community, be asking you to sign up. And hopefully that can happen in Chicago as well. We unite with Brother Frank and what he's doing right now in terms of advancing the struggle to hold the police accountable. But we understand as well now, so we got to have the power on our hands. That's the Black community on the police speaks to.
There are some revolutionaries who happen to be European American who during the Revolutionary War said, we brought you your freedom at the Ballot with them. And that's how this country, which is a white settler nation, got it from the original people who were here. And then they, as you pointed out, the slave catcher became the police officer. However, when you talk about Black people, as you know, the work of slavery isn't done until it's self-perpetuated. And so when you talk about community control of the police, I'm going to try and take this for 2 minutes. How do you control what Glen has labeled the Black misleadership class? Because in most of the Black communities, they are the ones, the 50 to 80 population, who come out, who request police at their meetings, I'm in a Black Association president, they're having meetings around a proposal from the borough president, give police your keys so that if you have an emergency, they can just come in your house. I went to a meeting where the police were asking people to put the cameras up on their buildings. This is Brooklyn, okay? And they were voting to do it. And I had to remind them about the fact that even though stop and frisk is supposedly abolished, the statistics on arrests of young people is still going on. And who do you think these cameras are going to be reporting on? They're looking at you because they want you out of the community. This is to make it safer for the white gentrification that's coming up. This meeting took place about 2 months ago. So when we are talking about Black community control of police, if you're not doing what you're doing here, going into the schools, enrolling the students, and understanding, we're not asking you to get up their guns, better not. We're asking you not to aim them at each other. And that's why community control of the police by Black people cannot proceed without analysis of the Black leadership class and control of the schools. Okay, you've got to do something about their minds.
Absolutely.
They need a 12-step program.
And the way that they identify the Black misleadership class is by us projecting the demands of the coalition.
Yeah, be careful with
that.
Black and Black. That's right.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's why we're saying that Black self-determination looks like this, 19 points. So when the city council or whatever politician comes to your neighborhood and tries to organize a meeting to cut off the revolution, the people are armed with an understanding of what it is that is in our own interest. So it's not enough just to come around being Black But now we're saying, where do you stand on black community control of police, schools, housing, healthcare, etc. That's how we identify our enemies from our friends. But more than that, in South Africa, during the struggle against settler colonial apartheid, the way they dealt with Uncle Tom, they would put a tie around their neck, put some gasoline on that thing, and light it on fire, and that set an example for anybody else that was talking about selling the people out. So it's a struggle to educate the people, but also organize the people with the capacity to deal with these Uncle Tom sellouts as well as white power itself on our own terms. And that's what black community control of the police is about. It's about going beyond whatever the goddamn Constitution said, because community control of police and all these other laws and policies and language that they want us to abide by are designed to contain the resistance. You know what I'm saying? To abide by the same laws written by the ones that said it's legal to sell my mama. So we saying that black people have a right to struggle by any means necessary for our freedom and self-determination. You know what I mean? And that's why black community control of police is important. And we saying that even as we are writing up these laws and whatnot by the white people's standards, we also building an apparatus in the community that's prepared to carry out the objectives of this campaign, as we said in the referendum. But whether or not the referendum is voted on or not, because as you said, Brother Barron, about the campaign in St. Petersburg, Florida, Sister Elikya can win all the votes in District 6, but she got to go up against the whole white population of the city of St. Petersburg to be voted as a city council person in a district that is mostly black. So obviously it's not enough just to abide by the policies and language and instructions and all that the white folks say we have to abide by. But this campaign, as well as the Know Your Rights card, which is not only about, again, educating people about what their rights is, but it's also to expose the dictatorship, to expose the fact that the police serve the interests of the white ruling class, whether it's consistent with what the law says or not. Ask that brother on the corner whether or not they got their rights read to them, or whether or not the police, shit, Donald Trump running around here saying, I don't care what the law say. When you arrest that nigga, throw him in the trunk, beat him upside the head, and roll off with him. You know what I mean? This is what the damn president is saying. That shit ain't legal. That's not legal. So we live in a dictatorship. And our task is to arm the people ideologically. And that's what this campaign is designed to do. It's to unleash the power of the black masses, the way Black Lives Matter acted like they was about to do. The masses came out behind Black Lives Matter because they were saying Black Lives Matter. But we saying that that's not enough. Black Lives Matter, sold your ass up. And in fact, they was part of this white power strategy to keep you from understanding what's in your genuine interest. We know that people can unite with the black thing. We know that white power is willing to do anything that they have to do to keep you from talking about the black thing. The only thing that stands between us now is arming the people with an understanding that the black thing must be consistent with the question of winning the power. So in Philly and in other cities, we are doing the work on the ground, and we said in our report, to arm the people with this understanding. We got comrades that's watching right now. Shout out to Philly Real Justice. We hope that y'all can unite with this and move this process forward. You know what I'm saying? Because we're going to do this thing. We're going to go back to city council, as comrade y'all said, and we already got it on video. This Uncle Tom city council president said out of his own nasty mouth that he can't and won't support black community control of the police. But it's clear 3, 4, 5 police murders later, that is not enough just to say justice for this one, that one. We got to come back there with more comrades saying black community control of the police. We need to start building these institutions and structures in the community to get the power. And that's what we're about to do. And that's what we call it on y'all to do. Fill out the form if you're interested. Uhuru.
What a very, very powerful ending to this dynamic to this dynamic day and this dynamic convention that we had today, and we will definitely continue part 2 tomorrow. But it is so important, again, to understand the necessity of this coalition and even why we call it Black is Back, because we realize that black face does not mean black power. It does not mean that you are for the people. It does not mean any of that. We also recognize that just because slavery so-called ended, the power dynamic did not. We as a community still have no control over our existence. The reality is the white community doesn't have to come to the black community for a damn thing. They don't have to come to you about practice. They don't have to come to you for anything. And when people talk about we had the first black president, I'm like, no, we didn't have the first black president. They had the first black president. A big difference. A big difference. So we got to, because the unfortunate reality is, because of how we were kidnapped and came to this country, it's hard for us to even conceptualize what that looks like. Black power, black community control. Malcolm said by any means necessary, which means by all means necessary. We are saying the ballot and the vote. It is not one or the other. By no means is it one or the other. And it is so important that we have organizations such as this, that we have these kind of conferences when we can have these conversations. When we can give definitions to this, it's so important for our community, you know, for the average everyday person, which most of us are, for them to really begin to conceptualize another way, for them to really begin to see we don't have control. It is not about, it's not going to do any good for us to just become a part of a system, just mesh in with the system that is based on a vicious, ruthless, imperialist, colonialist, white power structure. You know, and it's global. We can just see right now at the madness. We are the Black is Back Coalition for Peace, Justice, and Reparations. And we can see right now with the madness going on, regardless of who's in the White House. We have right now a crazy, psychotic fool in the White House. But what was so different about a cold, calculating, manipulative, charming imperialist hell-bent on war and the oppression of people all over? What is really the difference? And if people are going to talk about, well, one's a fascist and one's this, I'm like, well, then we're just doomed from the start, because it's still supporting an horrific evil. So these conferences are necessary. The work that we are doing is necessary. How we see how it might be just a little bit initially, a little bit, you know, but how we build it. There's no such thing as anything too small or too big that we cannot do. But how we frame it, how we define it, the vocabulary that we use, how we think, our politics, which will define how you eat breakfast in the morning. It defines everything. That is so important, to make it clear and to seize it and to seize these opportunities and to grab them, to make them realities. We have all these working groups. We need people to join. We need people to be a part of it, to do whatever you can, and to envision, to let it become a part of our DNA. Black power as a reality. Again, the way that it breaks it down for me is, white community, they don't have to ask us crap. They don't have to go to us for anything. They don't have to go to us to get anything passed or whatever. But the black community, that really tells you that this dynamic is about every aspect of our life, no matter what it is. I've seen FOP in Philadelphia called up in Orange, New Jersey, an all black community, that we want this teacher off the school. She sent me Abu Jamal some get well cards. And this all black community, this all black school board immediately capitulated, in spite of what, you know, black people organizing against it. They immediately capitulated and fired her. So, and the FOP from Philadelphia, primarily white, made probably one phone call to Orange in Orange, New Jersey. So these are the kind of dynamics that we are dealing with. This is what the fight is about. This is what it means. And this is what we must do. We must have these conversations. We know that
maybe not all of us are going to see everything the exact same way, but that's okay. We got to keep moving forward. And as long as we're united around the issue of Black empowerment for our people, and by any means necessary, and not just make it a word or a good saying, but to make it a reality. And to talk about how we do it. So, good people, tomorrow we will be starting here at 10 o'clock again, right? We'll be going from 10 to 4. Again, we'll be on another tight schedule. But again, it's been a wonderful, empowering day. Come back ready tomorrow. Kick some butts. Revolution, power.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Wait, can I say something, y'all? I just want to say something real quick. I understand that, you know, but the thing about it is,
If you have any other questions or comments, please come to tomorrow's forum. We're having another day like this tomorrow.
like we from another country. They found us here. They invaded our land. We are the aliens that we keep talking about, not the people in North Dakota. We need to wake up. For real, keep talking about we from Africa. That's how we don't keep getting separated. Because the people don't believe we from no Africa.